That's a lot.
If you're spending
I
350
didn't
on
know it was
those,
350.
you've taken a blow to the head. Like,
Wow. That
no,
I was like too late to start recording this, so we missed the entire rant. So we just got the boot to the head. Welcome to the show, everybody.
We're talking about really bad shoes that are out.
yeah, yeah, we've been blessed recently.
Yeah. Guys, this is a big one. This is episode 50.
This is episode 50.
This is episode 50.
And that makes sense. No, I didn't even realize the weeks have been going by very quickly.
Purvis, I have a question for you, right?
Okay.
When I called you half drunk at the airport coming back from Miami about a year ago, and we decided to do this, did you think we'd do 50 episodes?
Like I said, it's been some very, very fast. Essentially, it's been a year. We're 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
It's
been a year
this is mind blowing.
We missed 2 weeks. Remember
Okay.
We took that break for Kendrick, and then
is
so
true.
We're coming up on the year anniversary.
Wow. No, it, like you said, last year I would not expected to be in this position, but I feel like that's been our entire friendship from day one. It's just like, okay, we found each other at the apartment. Didn't expect to gain a long-term friend. So
here we are.
It's been a blast, and now we have Jasper here.
Yeah,
we're growing.
We've evolved into a 3-man weave. You know,
this is a lot of fun.
We're doing it. So it's a fun episode. So we have that's why we have such almost like a game. We're almost playing a game this episode.
I will say, Jasper, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Idea.
When we
phenomenal idea.
When we get past the news, we'll have Jasper introduce it. We're calling it the Blitz. Oh, just like live spitballing. Welcome to the writers' room. I definitely think we could do this again.
Sure.
Yeah,
this will be a series. I've already decided.
Yeah, because we did albums, which I think was a great starting point because we're a very album focused podcast. But for example, I wanted to put some house music on, but house music isn't really an album's genre.
Yeah, I was coming up against that when I was trying to do a lot of electronic.
I did. Yeah,
stuff.
I didn't have any issues. I was very happy with the route I went with my choices.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely bumped up certain, I don't know, pop punk is another one where I think there are great albums in that, but it's kind of more of a I'm gonna share a playlist kind of thing.
Facts. I feel that.
Yeah, we could do it for genres, we could do it for artists, we could do it for.
We can do it for literally anything.
Anything. So
any category.
This was a blast to prepare for. So yeah, this is gonna be a long one.
I was I was actually about to say, it's gonna be a good episode when it's the week building up to it, and we've already discussed the topic, and each one of us individually are throwing in a group chat, just this is fun, this is nice, or a random oh, don't do this album, do this album, and it's just okay, now I gotta get in my bag. It's just it's a developing thing.
Shockingly little of that. I was very happy with because something I was worried is are we just gonna talk about things we always talk about, which I know I indulged myself at least one time, and it was but I thought we covered great ground, so I think we're gonna have a great show.
Yeah,
I'm excited for the last round.
Yeah, the last round is gonna be the best one.
Something different.
A little something spicy.
Very different, very different. And I genuinely am kind of in awe, but also it is kind of obvious that we all went there.
Mm-hmm. But we all did it differently enough.
Very different ways.
Yeah, very different
so,
ways. Okay.
It'll be a lot of fun on this episode. And, to be honest, this was a perfect route for this week because there's not a lot of actual news to discuss.
No, there's not. Because we're doing this on Wednesday. We usually record about 14 hours before you guys see it.
Very fast turnaround.
I've got a going away party tomorrow, so it's
you're not gonna be sober.
No, I'm not.
That might have made for good editing.
Honestly, if there was ever an episode that I was we should all have 3 drinks, it's this one. Because usually we like to be
turning into drink champs.
A little bit. We usually like to be pretty sharp because we're more. I think we're kind of more thoughtful criticism, if I'm being pretentious. but like,
Oh yeah, not just fanboying out though.
yeah, like I think we kind of hit a fun balance, like
Yeah.
between like the fan space and like the critic space.
Bunch of music nerds.
That's exactly it.
It's literally.
Now, speaking of which, let's talk about the news.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's not a lot to actually cover. Everything I found is rumors.
Yeah. Now this could change.
Yeah, it could change by all means.
Yeah.
Little Uzi Vert is rumored to finally drop the pink tape.
It's got to be coming eventually, right? Like, there's no.
It has to be.
Please.
Like,
he's been discussing this for months now. We haven't gotten Uzi in
almost 3 years.
a while.
Yeah, no.
I mean, we get that EP, but again, that
for an album, for a full album,
right.
It's been almost 3 years.
It's kind of the only thing on my radar right now.
What's weird is that it feels longer. But
2020?
Yeah, no, it does. Just because like 2020,
I just feel like it's been longer.
2020 felt like a trilogy of years. Like between like
that is true. That is very true.
March 2020 to December 2020 felt like 3 years to me. Like
a time space that doesn't actually exist.
Because I know we bring it up all the time, but like After Hours came out like the month later. I have that same thing where it feels like it's been out for like 5-6 years, but like, no,
it really hasn't. Yeah. Right. And to be fair, After Hours easily going to be a classic.
Oh yeah,
those things last forever.
That is I am breaking my rule, and before the 5-year mark, I think After Hours is a classic.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
you don't do it often, yeah.
I don't do it often.
You don't break the rule often.
I think After Hours, right? And I'm not saying it about Dawn FM. I'm not saying it about Starboy.
I appreciate that. I do.
Right?
Because After Hours is significantly better, in my opinion.
Yeah, like, I might say about House of Balloons, but like,
that's fair. It's been over 5 years.
House of Balloons.
Yeah,
it's over 5 years. Well over 5 years.
And deservingly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's supposed to be coming out. Moving on from that, to be honest, there's nothing else really.
Yeah.
I know Brandon doesn't want me to discuss this, but
shut the fuck up. I'm gonna fucking waterboard you.
Nav 2 is coming out with Nav is coming out with Nav 2, the sequel to his first album. Unfortunately, a lot of people say it's the best album.
I just want to get off.
But anywho,
I just want to get out of the Nav cinematic universe. Like,
it's
not the NCU,
not the,
right?
Not the end of the Navaverse.
Look, I'm just saying. He is Thanos and he's just taking over, so you can hate him if you want.
We don't do that here.
Nav is very clearly the Ant-Man of rap. Like,
this got to be worse than Ant-Man.
Why would you say something so controversial?
No, there's worse. There's worse than Nav.
So I appreciate that.
No,
there's worse than Ant-Man.
Once again, like Nav, yeah. I would and I put this in the group chat and I stand by this. I would rather spend a weekend camping on the Ukrainian-Russian border than listen to this album.
Like I said, the only thing that I'm excited for with a Nav drop is the ensuing Fantano video.
Yeah.
Oh,
but I will say this: I would if Nav and like Hobson dropped at the same time. Nav every time, 100 times out of 100.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10 times. I'm picking Nav. Like, so there's worse. He's bad, but there's worse.
But Brandon, remember, you're worth it.
Oh my god.
Come to this unmarked location and do not bring weapons. You're worth it.
But anyway, how do you feel, Brandon?
I want out.
We only have one, I believe, a single. I don't know how official this is in terms of it actually being released.
Yeah. It was like teased, I believe, right?
Yeah, it was like a little music video to it. Smino dropped Smee, Myself, and I. Very creative, very dope sounding. I don't think this is actually leading to anything. Maybe just something he had in the drafts, but still dope. I would check it out.
Yeah, there's always.
But again,
there's always.
Sorry,
not always, but there's a lot of times like after an album, like you get like a few B-sides just released after. I
was gonna say there's been no deluxe, so
yeah.
Here we are.
That album's good enough. It doesn't need a deluxe.
It does not. That was fucking perfect. It's perfect. Perfection. But that's it. That's literally it. That's all the actual releases that we found so far. Again, it's early in the week, and it's been a very quiet week. But we have two major events that just passed. The first one I want to cover lightly, but that's the Rock Nation brunch that just passed. I just think it's really dope. I really do. It's a really cool event, and you see all the stars coming together. It's very interesting the connections you see in Hollywood. I don't know why. I'm not a movie person, so I don't know where I get this from, but like finding different artists or finding different actors and how they affiliate themselves with other people in the industry, it's always cool finding a new connection. So, in my opinion, it was a really dope event that happened. I don't know what they're really celebrating for if they do this annually, but you see people like RDC World, who's just like a Instagram comedian sitting next to Lil Uzi Vert. I just think it's a really dope like idea. And it's Black History Month. A lot of black people come together, so
yeah,
it's another really cool thing.
yeah, like
yeah, this is Rock Nation brunch has been a thing for a while. I remember seeing things about this like back pre-pandemic, and I think it was like 2018. I saw this really great meme about it where it was like some girl filming her boyfriend who had like a suitcase and was done up in like a really nice suit and like an orange shirt with like a black top and everything, black jacket, and he looks really upset, and she's like, "What's wrong?" And he's like, "I didn't get my invite to the brunch." And it's like some guy, but he's like dressed up real nice. He's got a suitcase, like
I
he's ready
actually
to
do
go.
remember that now.
Yeah,
Now that you
like
say that, I remember that meme.
That shit was
Jesus
fun.
Christ. I actually do remember that.
Yeah.
So yeah, now that you mentioned that, the brunch has been around for years. So
yeah, I
maybe
guess
I've
it
just
hasn't.
been.
I feel like it hasn't happened with the pandemic and everything, just because I didn't see any
That is
presence about it at all for the last couple of years at all, and then this year it's just like boom, it's everywhere again.
Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of a cool thing. I mean, like I don't care about what rich people do afternoon. It's like, look, this is listen.
It's so many famous people there that you actually care about, though.
Yeah, sure, 100%. And like, look, it's not something I think is like bad or it's like, hey, that's cool. It's like It's like, okay, like I'm sure it'd be great to go to. Like, if someone invited me, I'd be like, shit, yeah, I'll go get a tuxedo. And
that's literally like the meme, which you
hat.
have like $10,000 or eat brunch with Jay-Z. It's just like, give me the $10,000, bro.
Dude,
please.
Isn't it half a mil or dinner with Jay-Z? Isn't that the meme?
It's something like that.
Everyone's like,
regardless what the money is, unless it's like under $1,000, I'm probably taking the money.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like Jay-Z's cool, but it's like
Jay-Z's cool.
I have a question,
but half a mil pays the mortgage.
Yeah, exactly.
Half a mil does pay the mortgage.
Half a mil covers my student loans.
There's facts.
About to say, it does more than pay the mortgage. It does a lot of things.
Yeah,
I actually have a question.
What do you want?
It's a hypothetical, and it came up this week, and you have to answer it because I'm curious what both your answers are.
Okay.
Here we go.
If someone walks up to you in a public area and discreetly gives you a bag of money and says you can have the money, but don't ask any questions, what is the max amount you're taking? And just for example,
the max amount or the min amount?
The max amount you are taking, but you can't ask any questions.
I'm taking.
That's the only rule.
I don't know. Like,
I'm just saying. Think about it.
It depends on the
this
context,
is one of the hypotheticals,
right? Like, it depends on
Yeah.
the context, right? Like, is this a guy in overalls with bloody gloves on? Probably not going to take the bag at all. Is it a cat burglar? Probably taking it.
Bro,
Like,
imagine you're in Jewel and I turn into the owl and I'm about to hand you a bag of money. What is the max amount you would take?
Literally anything. Like,
infinite amount.
yeah, 100%.
I feel like anything above like 10K or like 5K maybe, I feel like it's dirty money. I wouldn't even take it at that point.
There's so much dirty money. Like, let me have some. Like,
Purvis, you and I both know working at Brown Bank that any transaction over 10K immediately gets flagged for suspicious review. So
this is true.
There is a downside in that
Jazz,
cannot...
I don't think you know how prepared I am to live off the grid. I don't think you.
No, I'm sure you are. But it's one of those things where there's just like logistical challenges with
sure.
Like,
yeah, 100%.
Kind of money like that.
Look, I gotta launder this shit.
It's like I'm gonna make it work.
Like, there's nothing.
I'm
like,
going to the grid. I'm taking all the money.
Dude, take all you can, give nothing back. Like,
okay,
to the
Jasper,
man,
come on.
to the man, right? Like, I'll like donate some to charity. Like, I'll do hella mutual aid. But I'm thinking, how much money is in that bag? Right?
Yeah,
Maybe if it was
mean,
like $10 billion and I would become like a supremely.
It's like, what's really going on here?
Yeah, I'd be like,
Yeah.
okay. Like,
to be honest, like one of my favorite movies is No Country for Old Men. So
Yeah.
just with that in mind, it would be hard for me to take any money like that. Like anything over $1,000 is like sus.
So what happens in the movie? For me, who do not watch movies.
So to break it down in a way that is not ruining the movie, in case you ever choose to watch it.
very good. I haven't seen it in like 9 years though.
Josh Brolin is just a normal dude living in West Texas. He's out hunting deer one day and he comes across the remains of a Mexican standoff. And he like investigates, he finds a bunch of dead guys and, you know, just like footsteps leading away, and he follows the footsteps. He finds a dead guy under a tree. And he opens up the little black satchel that's with him and finds $50,000. And this is 1981. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right.
And he basically is opportunistic and takes it. And then things lead to other things. The money is tracked. Turns out the cartel is looking for the money, as are the hitmen hired by the buyer of a bunch of cocaine. So he gets himself, just a normal civilian, gets caught in like this insane drug war gang event emerging, you know, on the frontier of Texas and Mexico, right at the time when the drug war really starts to heat up. And he goes through it. So yeah, there's
you can only imagine.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and it's just there's also, you know, we were just talking about it. There's a little reference to this in Grand Theft Auto 5. There's a scene where you stumble onto like a Mexican standoff. You find a briefcase with a bunch of money in it, and then when you leave, a bunch of dudes in trucks try to run you off the road. That is a direct Easter egg referencing this movie and this book.
What a great game!
One of my favorite books. One of my favorite movies for sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go find this.
Yeah, McCarthy's. I've got. Oh, they're in the other room. I have like a whole set of his books on my bookshelf in the front room because.
Yeah, he's an author I gotta dive into. I read The Road, but that's it.
The Road is good, but very different pacing from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, super solid.
All right, so shall we move on to the thing that I don't care about and shouldn't exist?
You can't have that take. That's not allowed. As you read a podcast now, you have to accept some things.
I don't have to accept like what the world should be. I accept that the world is.
Isn't it the other way around?
And it's literally a part of the world.
Yeah,
no, because you don't have to accept the world as it is, but you want it to be the way you think it should be, which would be without.
What I mean by that is like, yeah, I'll engage with reality, but like I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like the Grammys are a valuable thing that have a right to exist.
And that brings us to the Grammys.
Yeah.
Look, you're not wrong. You didn't have to say it.
Right?
Again, why would you say something so controversial?
Like Rock Nation
just like, you're not wrong.
Oh, right. Like that sounds like a fun time for the people involved. Right? Like that has a right to exist. Right? It's just like, let's just give some rich people some awards. And usually the wrong rich people. Like
Agreed.
Well, I will say you're not wrong at all. But this was a good year.
Yeah, no, there was some nice wins, and look, there is something to be said about like, do you really get so mad when like an award show makes the right call? It's like, no, you can't really.
I'm actually curious if either one of you know, because I feel like I do this every year. Even before he's running the podcast, we would have to talk about this. Every year, I forget that the Grammys has like 50 categories. So it's like an absurd amount.
It's spread out over multiple days for that reason.
Is it just as bad in other categories, or is it just rap that always gets fucked over?
It's a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't follow the Grammys too close.
So let me put something into perspective for you because I was reading about this today. Over the history of the Grammys, only 11 black artists have won Album of the Year.
Oh, so yeah, it's broken.
Yeah.
No.
So it seems that any media that is judged that is non-white tends to get the short end of the stick. And
Yeah.
I feel like we see that pretty much over and over again. Sometimes certain people come out and dominate, and that's great for their respective niche categories. But there's a lot wrong with it, and I think artists have been calling that out for a long time, and it doesn't seem like a whole lot's been done about it. So
Yeah.
I was going to say the article that you showed me at work is actually proof of this. The first category that I threw in here was album of the year, which is the biggest title I would say out of the Grammys, and it was given to Harry Styles. And in his speech, I think he meant well. It was just very poor word choice.
Yeah,
he was
he
saying
did.
not a lot of people like me.
Yeah.
He didn't clarify what that was in reference to, so it left everybody hanging.
Exactly.
I personally think it might have been related to his sexuality. That hasn't been confirmed. It's possible, but it's one of those things where we're not going to necessarily know unless he's already said something about it that I haven't seen. But yeah,
That's
just
true.
It's really
and at least from
not-
what I know from his character, he would.
yeah, not
Sorry.
well executed is just like I think the takeaway.
You know,
from that.
here's the thing, and like I saw some takes about this I thought was interesting, because like there is like an interesting dichotomy between like Harry Styles' album and Beyonce's album, in how they are both made by artists embracing like queer culture, kind of in a way, and like I don't know, man. Harry just seems very appropriative to me. It just gives me a bad taste in my mouth, you know.
Yeah, and that's
like,
something to be discussed for sure.
It's like whenever, like, say what you will, like he's more than welcome to keep his sexuality to himself, but it's not like it's out there and open, you know. So
it's not, yeah.
So and look, that's absolutely his right, and like that should be respected. But a part of that is that you don't get to use that kind of liberatory language because
there's a thing called privilege.
Yeah, because you're dominant. Because the thing that you are like presenting at is just simply as a white male, and it's like that is the most privileged group in society.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, and it's like. So,
I mean, especially look at British society.
Yeah.
You know,
especially there. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah. Even more so in a different way, but. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
somehow.
this is the kind of thing that continues to happen. To me, this is the equivalent of like, I don't even know what a good equivalent is aside from like maybe like La La Land getting nominated for Best Picture, let alone the whole mishap when that happened.
Yeah.
Where it's just like an industry that self-perpetuates and self-aggrandizes in a way where they are deliberately trying to draw the focus or draw media attention to themselves. And I can't think of anything better for that this year than Harry's House, which to me is just blatantly, ultra commercial,
very
and
generic, like
just like the most corporate possible music that could be considered pop, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Is it him and Taylor Swift? Are those the two then?
Yeah, I mean that would be my take for sure.
I think Taylor has some good albums. Like Taylor has some albums I respect. I don't know.
Yes, I agree, but the production of Taylor's later work, I
Midnight's,
think really is extremely like geared toward that like very like super produced, like Hollywood level, like big industry, like that kind of thing.
Her more pop albums, definitely. Like Midnight's the one that just came out, 100% agreed. I think like her more folky stuff that she did like the last couple of times around, that stuff I thought was actually very tasteful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't listen regularly, but from what I've heard, I feel similarly.
I give it a listen.
It's the stuff that leans into pop more that's just really kind of egregious.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree.
I haven't heard a single entire Taylor Swift song in my life.
Even the one with Kendrick Lamar?
Didn't even know there was one existing. I hope you're lying.
No, I'm not.
Please tell me you're lying. Why would they have a song together? Brandon, tell me you're lying.
I saw
Bad Blood.
I saw another good meme about this where it's like, for someone, it's amazing that Taylor Swift wrote a song called Shake It Off for someone who has never done that once in their entire life. And I was like, too real.
They made a song in 2015.
Yeah.
This has 121 million plays.
It's Taylor Swift and Kendrick Lamar. What were you expecting?
Yeah.
Don't tell me it's a good song, please, because I don't want to even play it.
Not a bad song. Good song.
God damn it.
It's a pop song. I actually think the album that song is from is actually pretty good. Like 1989, that album's pretty good.
You know what is a bad song featuring Kendrick Lamar?
It's a large buddy. Take, large take without even hearing it. But I'm willing to hear it.
It's not. This is not a large take. It's The Greatest by Sia, featuring Kendrick.
Oh, okay.
Bad song.
Okay.
Bad song.
Yeah.
Bad artist. Okay. We do not stand.
Okay. Yeah, I've never really cared.
I get that. Sia. Yeah. I was gonna say, okay, I get that. Never mind. Take it back.
For all of our
good take.
For all of our audience out there, a little bit of reading homework. Go read about the movie Music and what happened with that.
Really bad.
Music?
It's not good.
It's not good. Don't do it during the podcast.
We're not gonna. We don't have to dive into that. Just do yourself a favor. Be informed. Just about the general landscape of things.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, Taylor Swift won Best Music Video for what I do not know.
Over the Heart Part 5.
I can't believe that Heart Part 5 won Best Rap Performance, but not Best Video.
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense to me.
It makes no logical sense at all.
It makes no sense. Yeah, Heart Part 5 is a pitch perfect music video. I'm happy it won Best Song, like Best Rap Song.
Yeah.
It did win.
I'm happy as a song I got credit, but not for best
it's
video.
Just not right. It's okay.
And with deepfake being such a thing that everyone can't stop talking about, probably for good reason. You would think it seems like the culturally conscious choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you would think.
I mean, yeah, it's such a weird spot to be in because I feel like at the end of the day, a lot of times it feels like people who judge these fundamentally don't understand the angle a lot of music they are judging comes from. And for that reason, you see stuff like this where people get snubbed because there's just a lack of critic understanding. But that's my take. I don't know how true that is, but that's what it feels like when this happens over and over and over again, like my entire teenage and adult life. So,
Yeah, I see, I wonder, because on one end, I know the Grammy, the people who vote on the Grammys, I know it's, even smaller of a representative body than the Academy Awards, even.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, and also, marketing companies have, an outsized, representation behind the scenes at the Grammys. So, it definitely feels to me just very performative. It feels to me like watching commercials for 3 hours.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
and I literally make commercials for a living.
I feel like it becomes a question, right? Of what does the award really represent?
Yeah.
Because they've made it clear that it's not about what is critically the best album or the best music being made that year. At least not in every category. A lot of times it's a fashion show or a popularity contest.
Yeah.
And it's not even with popularity with individuals. It's popularity within the industry is what it feels like. It's kind of like that good old boys club kind of thing, because we want to go by popularity by, the numbers. Verano Sin Ti should have won album of the year. No question. In terms of Bad Bunny, when Verano Sin Ti, should have won over pretty much everything else. Just off of sheer critical cultural
facts. That is facts.
And even that, Beyonce and Kendrick would have been runners up for that.
Yeah. No.
What is the cultural impact of Harry Styles? I would love someone to tell me.
I don't know, and it's just and
it's not. I'm not the demographic. I can only say negative things.
Yeah, what's kind of crazy is when I think about okay, Harry Styles clearly stole it, but who did he steal it from? I'm thinking is it Beyonce? I think it's Beyonce.
It's probably Beyonce when it comes to
because look, I personally probably enjoyed Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, more. and Renaissance, just because I like hip hop more than dance music.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, yeah, no,
that's about the extent of it.
That's as far as it goes because that's a pitch perfect album.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, it's a frustrating situation.
It really is. But Kendrick did win rap album though. How do we feel about that even?
I was about to say
that one, while it's a popular choice, while I don't think many people are upset that it won, do you necessarily agree?
No, I personally do not. You know how I feel. I think
as long as the other option is Pusha T.
Yeah, I think it would have been totally valid for Kendrick to win Album of the Year. First time a rap album would have ever won Album of the Year. And then for Pusha T to win Best Rap Album of the Year. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the dream, but I feel like it's a pipe dream. It'll never actually happen.
Yeah.
Like you said, it is so much focused on popularity. The album of the year is Harry Styles. The record of the year was Lizzo, the song About Damn Time.
Yeah.
Which in reality, it's just a pop song.
Yep.
It's the most
I
played
think
music on the radio.
I
don't think Lizzo's bad. I'm not taking anything away from Lizzo, but I'm saying it benefits from being a pop song.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Like, and I even think like Kendrick's prestige of like being this larger than life artistic force is probably something that pushes him over the finish line when it comes to best rap album. You know, because like I'm very split on Pusha T or Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Because like on one end, I think Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers does a lot more, and I think it does it successfully. But like, what did I listen to more?
Here's a question. How much? And I'm wondering if anyone even thought about this. How much do we think that Kanye being a lead producer for the project contributed to, maybe It's Almost Dry not being considered to the same extent, just because of all that brought with it?
I think minorly.
I was gonna say, if anyone that would think about it, it would be us. I'm gonna be honest, I did not think about that.
I thought about it just because of everything that went down, where the whole Kanye Grammy thing that happened around 2019, 2018, and then after the fact, if it wins Album of the Year, I assume that means that everybody who produced it also effectively gets a Grammy. So the Grammys would then be giving Kanye an award post everything that's happened this past 2022, which probably isn't the best look publicly for them as an organization.
I can't say that is or isn't the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something to think about.
Yeah,
interesting take. I will say I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, my thing is that like when I think about like Mr. Morale probably edging out Pusha T, I don't think of it because of Kanye.
Agreed. Yeah.
Like. So
there's other things that play that could.
It's certainly not impossible. It's not crazy to think, but I think it's probably unlikely.
I think it's unlikely unless potentially there was intent at the start where it's like, yeah, we're gonna nominate this just in the interest of it's a good album, but there was never unless there was like never any serious consideration for making it, like rap album of the year. That would be the only way I could
pray. I pray that never happens.
Yeah.
Or if it's just performative and they know they're not going to give it a fair shake.
I would just hope that never actually happens.
My thing
to
is
any genre.
Like as awful as the Grammys are, I don't think the decision process is as centralized as to even pull that off.
Maybe, yeah.
Right. I definitely think like, look, it's an abysmally small group, but it's still probably thousands of people, maybe one or two. The Academy is a fraction of the movie industry, and it's like 200,000 people. Like, so I push back just knowing that part of it. I push back on anything that's like, oh, there's this grand planning because, like, if that's the case, why are they voting? No,
that's fair. Yeah. It's just something that I kind of thought of where it's like, to what extent does a nomination actually give you a shot at it, right? Because we don't know how the voting process. Personally, I don't know how the voting process works.
Yeah, no, and definitely like because I don't know exactly how it works for the Grammys. I know a little bit more about how it works for the Academy Awards. And I know it's like ranked choice, where it's like you say like, oh, what are your 5 favorite movies, and then like, you know, there's like an algorithm or something that like figures out like what are the most popular movies based on that.
Yeah.
And I would assume that the Grammys are similar, but I don't want to assume anything to their benefit. Like,
yeah, I mean, either way,
the worst.
the trend seems
I'm
to
hating
be
out
that
here. I am just straight hating.
the trend seems to be that whatever is the most commercially accepted from a pop standpoint is just the de facto winner for that category. And the examples I would give of that are this year, obviously, with, well, not even this year for rap album, but for album of the year. And then best rap album 2018 when Daytona and Astroworld and something else got beaten out by Invasion of Privacy.
Yeah.
And then 2013 when Good Kid, Mad City and Yeezus got beat by Macklemore's The Heist. That's all you gotta say.
And some are some of the worst ones.
I wonder if The Heist was even more popular. Like I don't think that.
I'm sure that it was in terms of just like sheer viral moment. In terms of like viral content, yes.
I don't necessarily think you're wrong, because I think it's definitely true for Invasion of Privacy. Like that definitely won because of its pop appeal. I disagree that it's as bad as The Heist. Like,
I want to look Heist is like the peak of like
this,
the worst thing you'll see out of the Grammy.
Yeah, well, Harry Styles winning Album of the Year this year is pretty bad too.
It's not as bad as this.
I just want to say the video for Macklemore's Thrift Shop on YouTube has 1.7 billion views.
Yeah,
and I really don't think anything on Good Kid, Mad City or Yeezus is going to come anywhere close to that. So I think in terms of sheer viral appeal and in terms of what was really trendy at the time with the mainstream, I think that this is far and away just completely separate from those albums. Yeezus had very mixed reception when it came out. 1.7 billion.
Look, I like Yeezus, but if you're asking me to pick between Yeezus and Good Kid, Mad City, that's not particularly hard for me.
I was really about to say, I looked up swimming pools and it's 153 million. It's not
even close. Yeah. It's not even close. Yeah, it's
that was the video.
And you know what probably has more than that is Bound 2, and Bound 2 is probably a fraction. Bound 2
Bound 2 is 149. Yeah. Poetic Justice is 149, but that's also has Drake. So that helps.
Even so, that's almost a tenth of Thrift Shop.
That's so gross. That's so gross.
Yeah.
It's because we were entering that era of internet where memes. Weird shit, not even memes, but like weird shit started to be cool. Like this is when Gangnam Style blew up. It's like around this time, like a couple years prior. And then you see all these like wild outfits, and it's like this goofy song, and they're like riding scooters and shit. And it's just like that wasn't like where the internet was yet in terms of like how bombastic things were. I feel like, and I think that is what like pushed this video to just be like this huge hit and just capture everybody's attention.
That was 2013, you said?
13. So the Grammys would have been awarded in winter of 2014, like in the February 2014.
Okay. Yeah. I was literally about to look up I was trying to think what was trending back then. I looked up somebody that I used to know, but that was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was a bit that was too long ago. But that has 2 billion. Like these are the videos I think about. It's just like, why does this have so many views?
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah, actually, I lied. It might have been 2012 because Good Kid, Mad City came out in 2012. Let me see.
Yeah,
and that lines up with this. Somebody that I used to know.
The Grammys have like a weird cycle.
Okay, yeah, I'd have to look it up, but these released at different times, so I'm not sure what the actual order is.
It's like March to something. It's not like the Academy where it's like January 1st to December 31st.
Yeah.
Like the calendar year. It's like off center or something.
Yeah, because Good Kid, Mad City came out
at the end of
October
2012,
October 2012, and then it was June of 2013 for Yeezus.
Yeah, and because the internet was on there too, and that came out in November 2013.
Yep.
Yeah, and
what a tragic event! How dare they?
Yeah.
How dare they?
Yeah,
disrespect those 3 albums to that extent. That is atrocious.
We could have basically prefaced all of this by saying Frank Ocean removed Blonde from being even considered for Grammys, so that is all the evidence we need that the Grammys are not exactly deciders of good or quality music.
Yeah.
The one thing Kanye did well was pee in a Grammy. That's the one thing.
Yeah, I agree. Like,
And then they still gave him one after the fact too.
Talking about influence, Jesus Christ. But anyway, some ones that I actually did want to celebrate, but besides all these other ones that we have been negatively talking about, unfortunately. Comedy album, Dave Chappelle.
no, I don't
Didn't
wanna
even know he
celebrate
had
that.
one.
That's
No.
not a victory
That's
in any
that's-
way.
Is it bad?
That's a
First
bad
off,
thing.
it's extremely bigoted, and second off, easily Dave Chappelle's worst comedy special. Like, even if you're a bigoted,
I haven't even heard it.
You haven't heard the closer. You don't remember all the controversy around it.
I don't understand how
I
he's
didn't
managed.
even know there was controversy.
I don't understand how brands are so quick to distance themselves from some people and not others.
Yeah,
Because to me, I'm amazed Dave Chappelle is not radioactive at this point.
yeah. Like he
How was he nominated in a how did he win this award?
I
didn't even know
don't-
about
I don't-
any of this.
I don't know the
So,
comedy
I
album's
think-
like a pretty popular thing.
I think the other thing that really helped was the fact that Netflix stuck by him and kind of validated him in that way, which
Yeah,
is, in my opinion, really shitty. But business is business, and they invested a ton of money into his originals, so they want to see a return on their investment and not just kill those off right away. Also, I gotta say, other people coming out to bat for Dave Chappelle because it's like a race thing, bullshit. Jerry
Yeah.
Lorenzo, one of my favorite designers, is currently doing that and released a collection associated with Dave Chappelle and his tour, which I think is pretty just fucking gross, in my opinion.
yeah. No,
I will be.
Dave Chappelle was one of my comedy heroes. He was someone I looked up to. I wrote a paper about him in a critical studies class. Like he's a personal hero of mine, and the fall from grace has been intense.
I
right?
think
Like,
it's interesting how this continues to happen to people who are, pop culture figures of the early 2000s. Look at all the controversy around J.K. Rowling.
Jesus Christ, dude, she is
Same
Brandon
thing.
gave me a whole speech about this week.
Yeah, no, J.K.
So-
Rowling is fine. I
It's
think
exactly
she's
the same thing for
easily-
Dave Chappelle.
I think she's easily a step or two worse.
No, in terms of
Yeah, like-
continued deliberate, I would agree.
Yeah,
But at the same time, it's like you see this movement of like people who represent something very like a very interesting cross section of pop culture where people can agree they like a certain media,
yeah,
and then the creator of that media goes down this increasingly like alternative path into something that is very fringe or very not
or just wrong,
bigoted
like,
or accepted. Yeah, just whatever. Yeah, the whole thing. So
yeah, and it's like, and it's wild. It's a wild thing. So yeah, no, I do not consider this a win at all. Right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know the Grammys like credential, like what they consider for comedy albums. Because back in the day, before like TV blew up in like the 80s, right? Like before the 80s, stand-up comedy was released on albums like music.
yeah,
It was not something you saw live. It was something you saw. So like comedy has a presence at the Grammys because like all the way until the 80s, like comedy was a part of the recording industry. Right?
I was going to say, so it was an actual real category that was competed for, whereas
but
today
now-
it may not be.
But now like comedy has just transitioned to being more of a television and now an
Viral.
internet thing, right?
Yeah.
Like
Okay, so I was going to say, cancel me for that whole take then, because what is a comedy album supposed to cover? When I was thinking comedy album, I'm thinking of like fucking Dave.
no, David's
Like-
not or like Lonely Islands.
Right.
Right. So that's like comedy music, right? Like that is music that's made to be funny, right? Do you watch stand-up comedy like on Netflix or HBO?
Occasionally.
Yeah,
Here and there.
right. Like it's great. I've watched so much stand-up comedy, right?
Yep.
You know how like you watch it in like 1 hour specials?
This would be the album. essentially.
The album would be that 1 hour special, maybe a slightly longer version,
yeah.
like as an album, right? And that was originally how stand-up comedy was distributed. And then like in the 80s, there was a big blow up of stand-up comedy, got super popular, like because of television.
The rise of late night.
Yeah, and
was a
then
big
like
thing.
the rise of late night was a huge thing. Starting with like George Carlin, that's when it really started to be like
That was 70s. Early SNL
Yeah.
was the start of that. He was the first ever host of SNL in the 70s as well.
Yeah. SNL just kind of,
Interesting
yeah.
enough, the names have literally changed throughout time. I went to go to Wikipedia. Apparently, 1959 to 1967, they actually call it Best Comedy Performance. Didn't
Yeah.
even call it an album.
Yeah.
68 to 91 was recording,
Yeah.
Best Comedy Recording. Not until 1992 did they actually change it to album.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just completely misbranded, and at some point it just needs to be removed.
Yeah. And
In my opinion.
I do think like they still release some comedy specials as albums. So I wouldn't doubt that there's some way you can get this a closer as an album. But yeah, that's just what it is. And it just sucks that like Dave Chappelle is just taken seriously, right? Like
Yeah, I'm taking a look. This whole category is filtered with mess. Bill Cosby has the most wins with
Yeah.
6 or
Yeah.
7.
and like the thing is that like just like music, you know, the kind of comedy that gets recognized at the Grammys is not indicative of like where the culture is
Yeah,
or
yeah,
like
100%.
you know, like to me like the best comedy special I saw last year was on YouTube.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
problem and another problem with the genre specifically is that like music, someone might have lyrics that you personally don't agree with, but it is definitely, in my opinion, easier to separate art from artist in that context in terms of who they are and what they stand for, because a lot of times art doesn't necessarily reflect their worldview or their beliefs, but stand up tends to draw directly from those things.
It's much closer.
So you are effectively bearing your soul a lot of the time when you go up and do stand up, because otherwise it just wouldn't be relatable. And for people like Dave Chappelle who are going to go out there and tell, very personal jokes, opinionated things that have the potential to directly impact the health, safety, and well-being of other people, there's a sense of personal responsibility there that's being just completely disregarded. And we've seen the knock-on effects of this over the past couple of years, and it's not healthy or safe for a productive society.
No. I say we move on. Is there anything else we gotta do from the Grammys?
Please no.
Yeah, like I know there's the whole Robert Glasper thing. I don't want to talk. I don't know anything about this.
Me neither.
Right? Like
The Robert Glasper?
yeah. Like
I'm just going to say it was a really good album, and I'm glad he won.
okay, because like
Could say that.
because I hear he's an incredible musician, but like I know some people said like oh it was awful that they gave it to him. Chris
Brown went on a rant, and
Oh,
in
I
my
saw
opinion,
that.
Chris
Yeah.
Brown never really existed in my circle, and I think he's overhyped. Personal take:
I totally agree.
he has some hits when in his early 20s. I think he's irrelevant now, and
Yeah.
I can get as much hate as you want.
No,
Yeah,
I'm firmly
way to be
anti-Chris
a
Brown.
gracious loser.
It's
No,
sure.
So I am firmly anti Chris Brown. I did see a TikTok where this person was like, "Hey, I actually agree with Chris Brown in that it's kind of wild that Robert Glasper and Chris Brown are even in the same category."
That's what Chris Brown said.
Yeah, and
He
it's
said,
like,
"Why are we in the same category?"
and like, okay, I think there might actually be something of an argument there that's not awful.
But if anything, Chris Brown should change. I feel like Robert Glasper was an actual R&B song or
No,
R&B album.
I agree with
Chris
that.
Brown should be there if that's the issue.
I get that as an argument. Once again, I have not heard either of these albums, but I get that as a great argument as to why Robert Glasper should have won, right? So that's valid. I think it's valid to say though that like maybe there should be like a more like traditional R&B and like more of a modern R&B or a pop R&B, because it's like I'm certain that if you listen to it, I'm certain the song like the albums sonically are almost nothing alike.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem, is there's no accounting for genre blends.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Is a pop rap album is more likely to do well than a rap album,
Yeah.
just because of its appeal to mainstream, and then we know that that's kind of what the Grammy Awards tends to fixate on.
But yeah, that's as much as I got. I haven't listened to Robert Glasper. I've listened to albums he's been on, and he's contributed to some of the best albums released in my
Yeah.
life. So it's like I'm sure he's great. Like,
But
but
then we
yeah,
can close out the Grammys.
let's close it out. Are we ready for the Blitz?
Do it.
On to the big stuff.
The Blitz. All right, Jasper,
What is the Blitz?
run us through
All
this.
right.
And why was this a perfect idea?
The Blitz is an idea that I had to try and bring more new music onto the show, not necessarily through news or releases, but through genre, because I found myself really enjoying kind of bringing on one song a week of my two recommendations that wasn't in the hip hop and rap lane, just because it's nice to kind of throw something new in there, something that I'm really listening to at the time that's not just that genre. So the idea here is this. Each of us has selected a total of 3 genres of music that we personally really enjoy. And for each of those 3, we've each selected 3 albums. So we've each selected a total of 9 albums across 3 genres. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go through, give a little rundown of each, taking turns, a genre we picked, albums within it, what those albums contain, and then also, what some standout tracks are, why we like it, and if, our counterparts have any questions, we're going to go ahead and kind of run through that as well. We've put together a couple of playlists that have 1 or 2 songs off of, or 2 or 3 songs off of the projects that we picked, and we're actually going to make those available in the link to this podcast after this as well. So, yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's some musical exposure therapy.
Absolutely.
This was a lot of fun.
This was a lot of fun. Yeah. It was really cool to just think about like, oh, like what music do I want to share? Like, what do I think will go over well? What do I think you guys will like? What do I think will broaden your horizons?
Yeah.
What do I think is like a fun piece of context? This was a lot of fun. So, how do we want to start? Do we just want to do the first batch, our first genre each?
Yeah, that works.
And we have 3 rounds of this. So this is the first round.
Right.
All right.
Ooh, should I open it up?
I was gonna say Jasper, seeing as it's his idea, and then we can do you the
Go,
second
Jasper.
time.
Yeah, let's do it. So for starters, my first genre was rock and indie rock. And I picked out 3 albums that span pretty much the early 2000s to mid 2000s.
Yeah.
My first pick is a kind of a softer album called Love Is Here by Star Sailor, which I kind of brought up on the playlist or on the podcast. I think it was last week, maybe the week before that. But I recommended the song Way to Fall off of that as one of my 2 tracks. And this was my first pick. It came out like 2001, British, kind of like Brit indie rock. And very different from what I think a lot of the indie rock space looks like now and also back then. It's got very kind of intense emotional lyrics over some lighter instrumentation. There's not a whole lot of really heavy sound on this, not a ton of guitar distortion, but there's definitely songwriting happening. There's a lot of keyboard. There's the use of piano and other kind of percussive instrumentation that isn't necessarily, again, super traditional. I will say some of the songwriting, the lyrics have not aged the best. There's some kind of corny stuff in there, but I think the vocal performances are so good across the project, just in terms of the range and the just the diversity that it really kind of stands out for me. So that was my first pick, and it's an album I've been listening to probably for, man, I would say I've been listening to that album regularly probably since 2016 or 2017. So yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed listening to these 2 songs because like indie rock from like the early 2000s, because that was a wave. That was a massive wave of music, like that
100%.
whole like garage rock and then indie rock and Britpop. And like my context for it has always been like super high energy groups. The Arctic Monkeys probably being like one of my favorites, kind of like the slam dance kind of thing. And I kind of liked how low energy this is. I know that's usually a dig in reviews, but this I think like is actually like well done. Like it's low energy in a good way.
Yeah, I think it does a really good job of generating ramps.
Yeah,
you've got
like
songs. You've got songs that are very, very slow that kind of lend themselves to this groove or this like slower start. So, for example, "Alcoholic" is a song like that. and then that kind of then pops up into something more intense, or just even the ending to the album, the way it closes out on Coming Down, there's like some intense energetic guitar riffing in there, and yeah, I think it has like a nice sense of flow to it for an album that is a little all over the place like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I will say I had to like go and listen to both of your like actual playlists that you made, the sample playlist,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of albums that I don't have the experience in, especially in indie rock. I have damn near no experience. I've had a lot of fun, actually going back and listening to like these albums. It's in my opinion, and this is coming from someone who is considered an outsider. Um, for rock music, I think it serves an amazing purpose just in music in general and just all the genres because I think it does the best job at live music, especially compared to hip hop, the genre of the podcast. It is significantly better.
Yeah.
Regardless what the instrument is, regardless whatever the song is, the drums sound better, the guitar sounds better, the vocals sound better. It just in general, of course, you get energy. We can go to Lollapalooza and we can go listen to the Stick by Jid and like we'll be hyped, but like it's a different feeling for
When
you
people
when
are,
you go
like,
see Metallica
making
at the
the-
same Lolla.
Yeah,
Making the
That's
music.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And you get
Like
major
you go see Metallica. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Metallica the day before that, and it's like Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
you
your
get-
brain explodes.
Yeah,
There's-
that's the best part about rock, is the live performance of it. It's just hip hop is great, like, and when you really get like into that party atmosphere, almost like Pusha T, I feel like is like a hip like that concert was almost like the purest hip hop live performance type. But when you see like rock, dude, it's in
It's just
all of its
different.
forms.
Yeah, the thing about it to me that makes it unique is the fact that not just one component of the track is recreated. Because in hip hop, you can't just reproduce a beat live on stage. It's going to be, you have maybe a slightly changed version of your original beat or your original, instrumentation. Also with probably some of your lyrics serving as backup, and then you are filling in the rest as the artist.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, you are completely recreating or redoing, in effect, your songs when you're playing a rock song, and there's a sense of excitement there because it's not exactly to a studio recording. There's the opportunity for deviation and experimentation with different effects and different volumes and just things that I think hip hop is a little too rigid in the way that the music is currently made for it to really lend itself well to. The only thing I could think of that would deviate from this is when I saw Gambino and he did World Star. And World Star had he actually brought somebody out to play the guitar solo at the end. That's the only example I can think of that really like lends itself to that rock format.
So I've actually seen, I can name 3 big rappers off the top of my head who had like full bands with them. And they're not like it's not like Anderson .Paak who like has a band like in their, like,
Right.
like has a
Yeah.
band, right?
I mean, to be fair,
But,
I
like,
could see Kanye and like Sunday
Yeah.
Service counting as that, but
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Well, like when I saw Lupe Fiasco, like,
Yeah.
he had like a guitar player, a bass player, and a drummer. When I saw
Yeah.
Vic Mensa, he had that. And an artist that I don't think anyone would peg for this kind of thing, Wiz Khalifa. When I saw him live, he had a band come
That's
out
pretty cool.
and
That's
recreate
sick.
the beats like live. And like I think this proves the point more than disproves it. Just that, yeah, when you have that live performance and that opportunity for like on the fly creative expression, it really enhances the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
It's
fully agree.
yeah, there's some sounds I guess you just can't recreate. Like I can't imagine numbers on the board being recreated by a band.
Right.
Yeah, no,
It just doesn't work. It doesn't lend itself to have an advantage there. Well, like the reason I was thinking about, I've thought about this for years in general, but like I'm literally sitting on the train, and I love drums. A sneak peek into my genre. One of my first genres was gospel, and like the biggest part about gospel growing up is the drums aspect of it. And I'm sitting there, like literally, like doing the kick pedal, like while I'm sitting on the train.
Yep.
And like stuff like that is like it's little things that adds to experience. I'm
Yeah.
not even watching it. I don't even know this band. and it's enough to like get that mental atmosphere where you're just like, I'm in the music now. It doesn't matter where I'm at. I feel like the music and the beat and things like that, and like it just lends itself to it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Should we go on to the next album because we got 9 of these?
Yes.
Yeah, I was about to say
each. Yeah.
So my next one is Broken Boy Soldiers by the Rock on Tours. It's a 2006 album by what I think is one of the most underrated bands in this space.
Yeah.
This is one of Jack White's 3 projects: White Stripes, Rock on Tours, and The Dead Weather. And I think he's got some other things going on, but those are the 3 that I'm really familiar with.
Yeah. He also has a pretty large solo career.
True. Yeah, he does have his own. That's right. Of the groups that he's kind of put together and been the frontman for, though, I think this one is, in my opinion, aside from like some of the White Stripes stuff, the best critically and also the most underrated in that vein. It's Jack White and Brendan Benson, who's another great singer-songwriter, and they kind of take a split approach, kind of Lennon and McCartney style, to the way they put albums together, write songs, and then sing and perform those songs. So you have certain songs that have Jack White's like super chaotic, intense vocal style and energy and writing, and you've got more calm tracks. You've got Brendan Benson tracks. He's a little lower, a little smoother, but at the same time, he can kind of keep up and match or even mirror Jack White's energy level. This album, 2006, super good. I grew up listening to this album. My dad was really into it. I got really into it, and I was really into this whole kind of, I'd say, more I don't even know, like Midwest rock kind of scene for a while. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of hits, a lot of classics on this album, in my opinion, and I picked 2 of the ones that I think are the most kind of like well known and palatable of those. But there are a lot of other really super solid songs on here, like Blue Veins, which is the closing track, Yellow Sun, which I think is a super underrated Brendan Benson track, and it's just like, I don't know, I think it really speaks volumes that Steady As She Goes, the hit track on this, has 203 million plays on Spotify. Nothing else breaks
that song.
Yeah, nothing else breaks 30 million.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's a solid project.
Sheesh.
Yeah, it's a solid project.
Sheesh.
I didn't learn about this probably until about 4 years ago, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I really like this album. Like I'm familiar with it. I was so happy when I saw that you chose it. And I do think it kind of like, especially when you put it in the context of Jack White's career.
Yeah.
It's like kind of raises some questions. I think it raises and gives some nice answers about like the nature of indie when you think about indie rock. Because like a lot of the sound from it, kind of similar to some things we see in hip hop, came from like having to be creative with your resources. I think about like the real early White Stripe stuff.
White blood cells.
Yeah, exactly. And now you get to the point where Jack White is when he does the Rock on Tours. If that's how you say it.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, you got it.
And like he no longer has to make those creative decisions. He has all the resources he wants. He is making those creative decisions because they're the creative decisions he wants to make.
Yes.
Right? So it stops becoming about like a necessity and more about an aesthetic. And like, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. So I think like this kind of like album represents like when indie kind of went from being like, this sounds like this because it has to like, this sounds like this because we want it to.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the Rock on Tours is the next step in the evolution of what I think Jack White wanted his sound with a group to sound like. I think the White Stripes was limited by it just being really fundamentally the 2 of them and what they could both do on their own, as opposed to this having additional vocals and another individual playing the bass and someone else on drums. And I think we see that kind of carried forward. The bassist who plays for the Rock on Tours, I don't remember his name. No. He's the same bassist who went on to play for the Dead Weather. So I think there's a nice connection there where it feels like Jack White found people and other artists he really wanted to work with and made or put together, a project or a group that had the ability to deliver on a vision.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree with that. Purvis, what did you think of these?
I was going to say, to me, I don't know the genre, obviously, as much as you two. My biggest question, even in terms of all three of these that you selected, don't get me wrong, the first thing that I came across was just like how impactful like the actual music aspect is and hearing a live instrument. The second part is what's the difference between indie rock and just regular rock?
So regular rock encompasses, in my opinion, a lot of stuff that is, and the thing is, definitions change over time, right? Just like with hip hop. But in my opinion, like my take on it is that indie rock tends to encompass more of a sound or a form of expression that is less refined. I would say that this album is slightly less on the really indie side of rock as, say, Star Sailor is in that sense, just based on. But again, these are different things because one is American and one is British. So there's kind of like different definitions. Now, this compared to my next one is completely different because that one is technically garage rock, which is another separate subgenre. But
say even more low key. I'm just gonna assume.
Well, it's lesser known, and it's I think how far they go from pop. So when you think about like pop rap versus rap, like actual rap for the sake of rap, I think of that as being, indie rock is rap as pop rap is to regular rock. That's how I see it.
I think like a good like Rosetta Stone to kind of understand it is like I think indie rock is kind of like the Chance the Rapper of like the rock world in that it is what you think it is. It's people coming from like independent roots, right? Not a lot of money.
I'm not gonna sign to a label.
Or very, very small micro labels, usually either in London or New York City. Right? So you see bands like as I brought up earlier, like the Arctic Monkeys. I suck at bringing up names of these ones, like the White Stripes.
Where would you put 21 Pilots?
Pop. I don't think
that's more pop. Yeah,
I would say because like I have a slightly different definition of rock, and like I think I'll bring that up when we get to my round. But I would say 21 Pilots is completely outside the big umbrella of rock.
I would
agree. Doesn't
agree.
even fall under.
No, I think it's pop.
I would say it's pop with rock instrumentation, and I think a lot of bands nowadays follow that format. I mean, Imagine Dragons is a great example of that. A lot of stuff that was big around the time when Purvis, when you and I were like graduating high school, is probably in that vein. So like Bastille, One Republic, shit like that. It's like they borrow elements from the genre, but it's fundamentally pop in terms of its structure and its lyrics and what it's trying to convey.
Yeah.
An invasion of privacy.
So
tell me about the garage rock, the D4.
Yeah.
So this is by far
this was a lot of energy.
This is by far the most obscure thing on this list, for me personally. So the D4 is a super tiny band from New Zealand. They are really, I would say, like the more underground version of what Jet became. If you're familiar with the band Jet, Are You Gonna Be My Girl? Stuff like that.
I know that.
So Jet was a garage rock band from Australia that blew up because they were featured in that Apple commercial.
Yeah, the iPod commercial.
And Get Born, their like first album, really took off and became like a smash hit. They didn't have many that followed that were good afterwards, but this is more like an underground version of that. So tons and tons of energy. Again, early 2000s, I think 2002 for 620, or no, 2003, my mistake. And it just celebrated its 20th anniversary. Just like a solid project. They, like I said, they are very off the radar. They have, after 20 years, 12,500 monthly listeners on Spotify, of which I am one of them. And they actually did release a kind of 20-year retrospective project called 621 that is available as vinyl. And I'm like trying to find a way to get it from New Zealand for cheap because that shit is expensive to ship.
Yeah.
And it's just I'd say very intense, almost in the punk vein when it comes to kind of like the energy level, the tempos that they're using, and then some of the instrumentation. But the vocals are a little bit more melodic than that. So it kind of strikes this happy medium between what I would say is like almost post-punk in a way, and then also just like what is indie rock. And that I think is what you could kind of categorize garage rock as, is like party music, anti-establishment, and then also like self-reflection and like where you fit in society is like kind of like one group. But that's just my interpretation.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think another thing, like just to kind of like center it a little bit, is like it's called garage rock because it's the kind of rock you would hear someone play out of their garage. So don't expect like layers, don't expect like strings, don't expect massive drum arrangements. It's very, it's high. Raw. Yeah, it's raw. It's stripped back. It's like a very elemental version of rock that had a very popular resurgence in the early 2000s. And it seems like the major difference between garage rock and indie rock is just like aesthetics and like maybe even location.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page for the D4 right now, and they're classified as garage rock, garage punk, and post-punk revival. So it's, in my opinion,
they sound
indie that draws more from punk. Yeah,
they definitely sound very post-punk because you're right, like that. The energy of punk is there, but like the aesthetics, I think, of punk just kind of aren't.
Definitely.
Like I considered bringing in a bunch of punk, but I decided to be kind. Like,
and it makes sense though too. I mean, you look at the British punk wave of say the 80s, and then how New Zealand and Australia drew from pop culture from the UK around that time, and then how that evolved.
Yeah. All right. So
yeah, I'm curious, Purvis, what did you think of these two tracks?
Yeah.
Did
so you get
tough
loose
for me.
Did you get up and get out and get loose?
It's honestly so tough for me because like and excuse my lack of knowledge and my ignorance, but it's so difficult breaking down what is rock, what is metal, what is punk, and things like that. Because like I literally have no experience.
I'll say
like
this,
when I say I know a ton of songs.
Yeah.
I know them by word. Like I know the full verses, but like in reality, I'm not in the genre, so it's hard for me to really appreciate it.
Yeah.
All I know is that like it made me feel good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's kind of like asking someone who only has a cursory knowledge of hip hop to tell the difference between drill and trap. You know?
It's just like
whereas like we
no
can
way
hear,
for me to know.
Like everyone on this call could immediately tell the difference. You know,
right.
Like, yeah, it is. I'll say this, a good hint. No one brought any metal songs.
Okay, yeah. That's what I would say.
Alice in Chains kind of touches a little bit metal.
They do,
but,
I was going to say, if anything, you have me listen to Metallica, like, I can determine
Metallica's
kind of what's the difference between
Metallica's
like I know what's that,
but there are so many,
I know it's the other stuff.
But there are so many subgenres of metal that break down into like different sounds
100%.
that then you get into the whole kind of rabbit hole.
Yeah. And like this is just a very specific one, but like I think you brought in like a really good representation of the genre.
And that's the thing where I feel like I don't want to say that I didn't appreciate it enough because I do like the music and I enjoyed everything I listened to. But like coming from the outside, for me personally, and again, this could just be a blinded take. When I listen to hip hop, I know what's underground hip hop, and I know what's pop hip hop, and I know what's experimental hip hop. And like I can keep going because there are very different sounds between an Earl Sweatshirt and a Drake. Like they're so polarly opposite in my opinion. They don't even it's almost like not even the same genre.
Yeah.
So for me, it's almost impossible to know what's indie rock in a genre.
I am so happy
garage rock.
I'm so happy you brought this up because like
it all sounds the same to me.
Because like I knew you would have like that hill you got to get over because I think like that when I started getting into house music like 5-6 years ago, like I had the same thing. Like I didn't know what the difference between like traditional house and French house and deep house and like what all these different things were. But now I can kind of, figure
decipher.
It out. Yeah.
Right.
So I just think it's exposure. Because like whereas I think Jasper did a really good job bringing in like very laser focused, wide breadth of like a movement. I tried to bring in rock from like all over. And I was like, okay, he'll probably be able to tell what these are. Like, he'll probably be able to. He'll be able to tell the difference between these.
I will say off the bat, your rock music, and I know they're two different genres. I don't remember what your title you were. But your rock, I actually knew.
Yeah.
Jasper's was all like, okay, this is new to me.
Yeah.
This is all new to me.
I gotta say, I think one thing that's important is, I think for the listeners, it's good that we're breaking down, genre definitions and basically explaining, what the context of this music is. But I think at the end of the day, for like what we're doing, where we're going off of each other's, like for me, I definitely didn't fixate on what the genre was assigned to the music I listened to on either of your lists. I was more so thinking about like musically, vocally, what is it that I resonate with on this project, even if this genre is not something that I would personally listen to myself, or if or something that I don't listen to every day. What do I resonate with? So I think going forward, genre is less important, as is just how you felt about the music.
I agree.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
All right.
But yeah, well, that's the whole of my first one.
Purvis, you want to go next?
Naturally, I don't know. Do you want to stick on rock or do you want to change it up?
Let's take a break.
Okay, let's take a break on rock.
Let's take a break.
We are gonna take a sharp turn.
Let's take a sharp, because you know me. You know I like hard left turns. We're gonna talk about some God music.
I'm bringing religion. No, I'm just joking. No, actually though, my first genre that I decided to dive into was gospel. I've given Brandon a taste, a sprinkle of fairly commercialized gospel, but I chose the album that I had him listen to by Tri Tribute. I decided that one because it is the closest to a hip hop album in a sense. There is a whole subgenre of hip hop gospel that I won't even dive into.
Yeah.
But I feel like that was the most enjoyable for you to kind of get an introduction to, even though I know you've listened to gospel music just like for the podcast.
Yeah.
But the ones that I took are much more in depth, I would say. The first one I wanted to talk about is a very well-known artist, Kirk Franklin. I think Kirk Franklin as an individual stands above so many other people in the genre just because he is like the face of commercialized gospel. I don't know if you all listen to the music, but like this is, when you think of like hype black churches, this is what I want you to think about.
Yeah, but this one,
I want you to feel the energy.
Most like I'm in the place. I listened to both of your playlists twice, so I know what's going on.
I was gonna say I listened to everyone's songs. If you did listen to the Kirk Franklin one, like I said, it is the most like you feel like you're in a church. And with gospel music, as much as I want to hype up like acid rap or Blonde being the most listened to albums in my life, it's undebatably gospel. That's all I could listen to growing up. Unfortunately, being a pastor's son. And it's all I have been listening to since day one. So like Kirk Franklin is the definition of like, you turn on 1390 AM, which neither of you may actually know what that is now that I say that. Holy sh!
No.
I just realized you guys don't know what 1390 is, which again blows my mind.
I listened to growing up. We listened to AM radio for traffic and Bears games. That's it.
Literally, it is the news. AM is the news. I can't believe I had to explain this, and I probably had to explain this with a lot of our listeners, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but 1390 AM is literally the gospel radio station.
Yeah.
This is something you would hear growing up. This came out in 1998. This is the New Nation Project by Kirk Franklin. It's literally like you turn on the radio and you're having church in your car. So that's why I chose this one. How do you guys feel so far about these albums, or this album, the first one?
The first two?
If you listen to it.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. So here's the thing. I have some ideological issues with some of the things said in the first song.
I know that was going to happen.
But musically, the first song was like cool, but like, I told you this when we talked about the gospel album. It's like, to me, like the more straightforward gospel stuff, like I could instantly fuck with, because I think aesthetically and sonically it's just gorgeous, right? Mm-hmm. But the stuff that's like this kind of like is trying, like almost like bleeding into hip hop a little bit, it sounds a little it doesn't work for me. It makes gospel, it makes hip hop worse, not gospel better. Like
It is
It
the
has
worst genre to have a hip hop subgenre.
it feels like the hip hop version of Christian rock a little
Yeah,
bit
it
in that way.
does.
I would agree.
Yeah,
But
but
I'm
like,
curious.
but
Oh, go ahead.
the less like hip hop one, something about the name of Jesus. I like that song like shockingly considering the name of it and my
Yeah.
religious convictions. Like no, but like it's a gorgeous song. So like
Yeah.
this was probably my least favorite set of the three you brought for gospel, but like I still liked it plenty.
I
So
agree.
Jasper?
I enjoyed the high energy, and not to skip ahead too much, but I'm curious, what would you consider to be more authentic to your kind of religious experience when it comes to actually church going? Would you say it's the Kirk Franklin selection or the Marvin Sapp selection?
It would most definitely be the Marvin Sapp.
No.
That's what I thought, because you
100%.
yeah, because you mentioned that this was church music in your car, and I felt that way about this, but it was like there's something a little more definitely polished commercial about it. And knowing what I know about Kirk Franklin, I mean, that makes sense to me. Yeah, I just thought that the call and response elements to Marvin Sapp were really kind of put it over the top as far as being like the more authentic in that way.
Oh yeah, if you took that as like something you've gathered from the three albums, that's perfect because like even that alone, like I was saying, it's hard to tell the difference between garage rock and like indie rock. If you can tell the difference between like a Kirk Franklin album, which is very clearly commercialized, meant for the radio,
Yeah.
and a Marvin Sapp album, which is like much more conceptual, something you would actually like play at church.
Yeah.
You wouldn't play Kirk Franklin at church in reality.
I mean, like I like the Marvin Sapp was my favorite.
Yeah.
Not to skip ahead, but like.
Oh, of course, yeah. So I mean, we'll go for it. I'll just go ahead and do the Marvin Sapp next. Then, Marvin Sapp was the third selection I had for the albums. If both of you, if that's what you take away, you hit the nail on the head. Honestly, Marvin Sapp is 100% what would actually be played at church. I feel like growing up Baptist Pentecostal, my official is Church of God in Christ, but I won't dive into that. It doesn't matter. Kirk Franklin is kind of sometimes looked at in a negative sense, which I personally, as a younger generation, do not like, but a lot of older generation do not like quote unquote worldly music, which Kirk Franklin would fall under.
Worldly?
Because I'm not lying.
What do you mean when you say worldly?
Is it because
a
it
quote
has that
unquote
kind of
worldly
pop sound?
album because it has that pop hip hop sound?
Okay.
I'm not even
It's
joking.
the more commercialized. That's
More
just what
polished,
the more
commercial, yeah.
commercialized sound.
100%. Where more traditional gospel music, whether it comes from slavery times or wherever you want to take it from, is more call and response, more actual spiritual, I would say.
So worldly being anything outside the church versus things that would
100%.
actually be authentically made in the church.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So you guys got it. Honestly, if that's what you take away, you guys hit it round the head. Like you said, Marvin Sapp is 100% something. When I was young and forced to be in the choir, I know these songs more than the back of my hand.
Yeah.
like this is essentially ingrained in my blood. Like
that's me
I
and Frank
can't not know the
Sinatra.
song.
Like,
Like I bleed it. It's like you can't help it.
yeah.
But yeah, honestly, that's all I really want to share on Marvin Sapp, and both your takes are amazing on that. If you can tell the difference,
because like I think all three of these have like a very pronounced sound, like a very. I did not struggle to separate these.
Yeah,
you know?
very distinctive.
Yeah, very distinctive to me. Do we want to move on to the family service choir, Sunday service choir? Because like obviously like
yes.
This one is probably most relevant to the core content of this channel / podcast.
Yeah. So I was gonna say yeah, I was gonna say that this was technically my second one. This is the one that probably stands out the most. The reason I wanted to include this, the Sunday service choir, is very, very unique in its placement within the genre. It is in no way openly accepted in the genre. Like it doesn't have its own official meaning to it. It doesn't hold any weight within it, but I think it does serve a purpose in what gospel could be.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Sunday Service Choir is directly associated with Kanye West, and he does appear in the album. So, forewarning to anyone who wants to listen to my playlist, if you are still on a no Kanye list, I respect it. Skip the songs. But I think this separates itself from Jesus is King, which is Kanye's album, and actually goes more into the gospel side of it. I think when Kanye dropped Jesus is King, it was extremely controversial as it was nominated for awards within gospel. And Kanye, depending on who you ask, may not be that religious.
Yeah, no.
So
now,
I wanted to start. Go ahead.
So to me, as an outside looking in on this one, to me, this definitely, like, you could tell, like, this is not coming from the church. To me, it feels tasteful.
Not at all.
To me, it does feel like a tasteful recreation of those gospel sounds. Like,
that is exactly what it is.
But
it's essentially, I was gonna say it creates its own controversial because, like, as I mentioned before, the definition of worldly music, this would be even more than Kirk Franklin. My dad. I have a funny joke with my brother because my dad preaches about Kanye West. He calls him Kanye or Cayenne West as a joke, because Kanye West has done many negative things. And so, like, my dad would not be caught dead listening to Kanye music, but like my brother and I have played this album around the house, and he would enjoy it. So without telling him who it is. So it's a very interesting conversation or narrative that's being created now, because I feel like a lot of gospel music has been sheltered or withheld from the world because just religion and how it works. Right. It's how religion works, unfortunately. By listening to these albums, you are lining up with the things they are preaching.
Yeah.
And I think it serves a purpose of, like, actually making it more accessible.
Well, like, that's the thing, right? Is like, because I'm someone who has, like, some deeply anti-religion views. But, like, I know. But, like, you have 6 songs here. One of them had stuff I object to on an ideological basis, which is not, which is a very small amount, right? So, like, I think there's something to be said that, because I don't think religion is, like, all bad per se. You know, I think, like, it can lead you to, like, really beautiful revelations. And, like, to some people, that's how they get genuine human insight, is through spirituality and faith in a higher power that I just personally don't believe in.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, it doesn't come across as alienating at all. But, like, and it's kind of ironic, because, like, the Kirk Franklin, to me, was by far the most alienating. And it's like...
Really?
Yeah, like, just because, like, it seemed to be pushing.
He does say some very
he seems to be pushing
specific
more
things.
The ideology of Christianity in the face, whereas Marvin Sapp seems to be talking more about Christian values, which, you know, when there are ways to break those down, that I would agree with.
Yeah, of course, and like you guys mentioned, Marvin Sapp is actual church music. Yeah. So if he is the one breaking down the actual values is how you should actually act as a quote unquote good Christian, where that Kirk Franklin is more commercialized. Anyone can turn on 1390 and praise God, if you want to quote it that way, but may not be as involved with the religious practices necessarily.
So,
but Jasper, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think that where Sunday service sits, I feel like it draws from, you know, gospel aesthetically, but I think, in my opinion, it sits totally outside of that, just because it feels like so much of an insular thing. It doesn't feel like anything else directly relates to it other than Kanye's own discography. So in that way, I could see how it kind of is like an olive branch to it, but I don't see it being directly referential or inspired by in that way. So, like, to me, I think that while, you know, people might be interested in the sound of gospel based on listening to this, in my opinion, based on what I've heard, something that would be more akin to like actually incorporating it into a more mainstream genre would be something like Chance 3, like the song How Great, where it's like you're taking like actual elements of not only the style but the subject matter of the music, and then embedding that within your own sound. And I don't think that Father Stretch or Rain do that, but I think that they're both good in their own way, in that they draw those elements to make something else.
I couldn't agree more. I think
my take.
Yeah, no.
That is, in my opinion,
great take.
I think that's an excellent point, because even you bringing up Chance, I considered making one of Chan's albums like a gospel one, but I think when you actually break down the album within itself, it doesn't qualify as a gospel album.
It's too,
but it absolutely
broad.
has exactly. It's too broad, but it has strong elements. It's just who Chance is. Chance grew up in the church. Whether you want to admit it or not, if you like Chance, you like gospel music, because it's
there's a lot
all
of
over his albums,
all over.
Right.
Even some on Aspen, like going all the way back to 10 Day. You know.
Oh, for sure.
Even on 10 Day, he mentions the same thing.
Yeah, but it seems like if you have one song on your album that's not gospel, you have one Juice, you have one Cocoa Butter Kisses.
Kind of scratches the whole thing.
You're not gospel, right? Like,
right. It's unfortunately religion is very like black and white.
Insular, right? And which is my ultimate criticism of it. Like,
I was literally about to say, we've had so many conversations about how religion colors a black and white world.
I wish our conversations about Nav would be as respectful as our conversations about religion. Like,
no. I would much rather have respect for religion conversations than anything.
Oh no, I agree, but I'm just saying I wish we could give ourselves the same respect that we do when we talk about that awful Indian rapper that we do when we talk about the metaphysics of the universe.
we have to have some kind of controversy. Come on.
Batman and Superman gotta fight sometime.
It's gotta happen eventually. But like it's true. It's very true. The comment with the Chance the Rapper. Another thing I was thinking about is Peter Cottontail, who he associates
he's great.
with.
Yeah, I'm so pissed I missed him at La La Land.
Phenomenal. Yeah, would have been phenomenal as an example. But yes, those are the gospel albums. 3 very different takes. If you are a listener, if you're interested in the playlist, check it out. You will be able to tell the difference between each one.
You know who I'm surprised you didn't include?
Who?
Fred Hammond.
He is extremely high on my list. If I'm being honest, I just did the top 3 that came to mind right away because they were all very instinctively different. If I was to do a Fred Hammond, it would be to replace like a Marvin Sapp, because they are essentially in the same vein.
Being a very basic white man. A very basic white man, Jesus is King exposed me to who Fred Hammond was, and that song Hands On, he's got a banging feature, and I was very interested.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong at all. Fred Hampton, the fact that you said Fred Hampton, you take all the flowers, everything. You know gospel music, so
a little bit.
You fully deserve that.
I had a coworker back when I worked for bus and train company, who sweetest woman. Her name was Christine. Super friendly, super religious. Super South Chicago. Baptist,
a nice old black lady.
Yep. And I would walk over to her cubicle sometimes, and she'd have her earbuds in, and she'd be like mouthing along with her eyes closed, like going like this and shit. And I would just stand there. I would just stand there, and she'd go. Oh.
So you met my mom. You met every black lady I know.
Some incarnation of iconic, and that's just like such a fun vibe.
You will definitely find a praise worshiper at one of your corporate offices just jamming out to gospel.
Yep.
Power to them. All right, Brandon, let's jump right back into rock music.
All right, yeah. So like I did go like a little bit of a different way, because like every one of my albums are like a little bit of a different flavor from rock. Because like that's what I kind of wanted to do, is I kind of wanted to give you like a little bit more of a Rosetta Stone, to be like, these are like the different manifestations of this. So we should just start with like probably one of my favorite rock album to come out after the year 2000. Alabama Shakes, Sound and Color.
This is a good album.
This is a
Yeah.
great
I know
album.
you haven't explained it. I know you haven't broken it down. Out of all the rock albums, I'm not gonna lie, this one got me.
Did you
I was
listen?
like, this is good.
Were you aware of these before?
Referring to your 3 albums or just the
Alabama
album Shakes?
Shakes.
Or the Alabama
Alabama
Shakes?
Shakes.
Alabama Shakes, never heard of it. Don't know who it
Okay.
is. I heard the
Have
2
you Googled the
songs, thought it was
bands?
phenomenal. No, I heard the 2 songs and I was
Yeah.
like, this is really good, but I like had to keep listening to the rest of them.
Would you be surprised that it's the only rock band with a black female singer?
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
no, this
I appreciate that.
yeah. So this is like very classic, like Southern rock. Really heavy blues influence, but not a traditional blues sound. It's very grimy. It's very overdriven. It's not like in your face like metal music, but it's rough and coarse. And yeah, no, I just think this album is just 12 tracks of incredible like rock instrumentation, just amazing grooves calling back to like the classic eras of rock like the 50s and 60s. And Brittany Howard is one of the best singers ever. She Give Me All Your Love, that the chorus to that, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, so I just had to recommend these just because, like, one, I wanted to show that, like R&B, which I think is when we think about genres me and Purvis listen to that aren't rock, R&B is probably number 2 for both of us.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah. Like, and I kind of wanted to showcase, like, rock can be a platform for a truly powerful singer just as much as R&B.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm fully sold on Alabama Shakes, for being honest. I had not heard of them before this. As soon as I hit your playlist, these are the first 2 songs, immediately put me in the zone to like, okay, I'm listening to music and I'm enjoying all of it. I'm going to discover new things. Everything that like I heard was phenomenal. You bringing up the singing, absolutely agree with that. It, as someone who's an outsider, it didn't feel like I was listening to rock, which is
that's interesting.
It's a lot.
So, like, how did it?
It's a lot to say that.
How did it feel to you?
It felt more natural, just like in general. It's hard to put like a.
It didn't feel
what kind of genre it was. Yeah, no, it didn't feel like, okay, I have to like really learn about new things right now. It was kind of like I familiarized myself with this. I enjoy everything that I'm hearing. I'm willing to hear more.
Yeah, no, this album, excellent start.
So I'm curious then, within rock music, because we talk about hip hop nonstop on this podcast. When we think about like, exactly, when we think about like a classic hip hop album, we say things like concepts and themes and etc. Is there a reoccurring topic? Is there a story here, or is it literally just like 12 hits?
It's an exploration of a sound. You know, I would say that. Like, it's less a concept and more like kind of like exploring this southern rock blues, like old, like 60s and 70s R&B, not like 90s or even modern R&B. Like, I would say it's more of an exploration of that sound, right? Now, concept albums were more or less like kind of invented by rock musicians.
I was literally about to say, does it even exist in the genre?
No, like concept. There are a lot. Hip hop right now probably has more concept albums than any genre ever. But the origins of the concept album is in rock, right? The Metallica album I showed you was a concept album.
Right. That whole 3 albums.
Yeah, and then
take it back even further, like Pink Floyd.
Yeah. Rush, 2112, Sgt. Pepper's.
Sgt. Pepper's is a great example.
You know, so like this specific one, Alabama Shakes, no, they don't really have concept albums, you know, and it's more just like 12 tracks, kind of like exploring different kinds of production, different kinds of styles. Like, you'll notice that like her voice is mixed very differently on different songs, and you know, it's kind of I don't like it equally across the album, but it's an interesting collection of songs that I think overall makes for a great experience.
So, with all that being said, I am genuinely curious. I won't answer myself because I'm obviously more experienced in hip hop. But for you two, we've discussed previously how better hip hop albums are more conceptual. For rock albums, do you want a concept or are you okay with just 12 bangers? Because in hip hop, sometimes we get 12 bangers and we're not happy.
Yeah, well, that's because like with hip hop, I feel like it depends. I mean, in some ways, I think like it's kind of the same exact story in that a concept album is it's another vector for success and or failure, right? I think about an album like Green Day's American Idiot, which like is above average sonically, maybe even very good, not great, but it has an incredible concept and that like brings it over the finish line. And then you have their album after that. I think it's called 21st Century Breakdown.
Yes.
Exact opposite, right? Songs on it are fine. It's not sonically terrible, but the concept's just so bad that it brings the entire experience down, right? Now, once again, like, yeah, we get like in hip hop, when you get like the non conceptual album and it just doesn't satisfy, sometimes it's because like it's two songs done 12 times, you know? Like,
Very true.
You know,
Very true.
And also like that happens in rock. You know, like, and I would say maybe even more frequently. You know,
I was
like,
literally about to say I feel like it would even occur to me even more often.
It would
So-
like hot take. I think the Red Hot Chili Peppers are a great example of that.
I wanna jump-
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to jump in here for a second to add to this. I think it's really hard to compare these two because of the timeline that you're on, where you have very different media factors that drive what is popular. So I think, especially for classic rock from say 1960 to now, or say 1960 to 1995, I think that a lot of what you're describing in two songs being done 12 times has kind of settled to the bottom of the tide pool that is rock music, and a lot of that stuff has been more or less forgotten, a lot of the old stuff. So I think that you don't see it as much in the older stuff as you do in stuff that is now perpetuated by social media and is, you know, contemporary in that sense. I think you're seeing a rise in that kind of filler rock in a way.
I strongly disagree.
You think so?
Strongly. AC/DC has made two
Why?
songs.
Well, yeah. I mean,
since the 60s.
there are outliers. There are outliers.
Well,
I
these are
agree.
not. This is AC/DC is not an outlier. They're one of the most popular rock bands in the world. I would say you can say the same thing about Aerosmith. You know, I think there's a
Well, yeah, but you look at like Hendrix and Pink Floyd versus like Ram Jam, and you know, one hit wonders are one hit wonders. But a lot of those one hit wonders that, you know, made
Sure.
the same song, and that's why they're one hit wonders.
Sure, but what I'm just saying that like there are plenty of examples of like albums that are clearly corporate products before anything else, going back to the 60s and 70s.
No, of course.
Which I think
that's
results
fair.
in the same thing, right? Like, I think Aerosmith is a great example. They have, you know, between all their albums, they probably have 30 classic songs, but they have 20 albums and they all have 15 songs. And I don't know a single person alive, including people who listen to exclusively rock, that could like name all their songs, right? AC/DC is famous for this. They do the same thing. Once again, like, yeah, I think social media and like just the breaking down of barriers that came with the internet age has definitely exasperated that. But I think it's just not. I think it's an older phenomenon than that.
I think it's an older phenomenon, but I think that time has eroded public awareness of certain albums that do that egregiously.
Sure, but that doesn't mean that they didn't happen.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm just saying that like I think the examples that you do find in rock are a little further and fewer between in the earlier stuff, because there's been time for stuff to kind of become forgotten about.
Sure.
In that way.
Sure. And the other thing is that like the underground scene was in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s eroded the time a lot faster than anything modern is going to, just because of like how things were stored and archived and stuff. Like tapes degrade so fast.
Yeah.
Like
I was actually going to ask because I'm curious, if I fully understood your both takes, because again, I don't fully understand like the album or the genre like that.
I would say being an outsider gives you a unique opinion, not an invalid one.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious then, because as technology has advanced, obviously, streaming numbers, exposure, everything has just ramped up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's more concerning or impressive to what you all are discussing if it happened back then? Just because back then, I feel like if something was mass produced or corporatized or whatever term you want to use, is it more impressive to do it back then? Because everything's word of mouth back then, and if you really like an album, you had to buy a record, which costs $20 compared to $10 for unlimited music on Spotify per month.
Yeah, or even
it's
like
two totally different
if
scopes.
you bought it digitally, it's like 6 or 7. You know?
That's what I'm saying. It's literally two totally different levels of field of play. Like, one conversation that always comes up, I feel like, when you're discussing music, even though this cross genres, in my opinion, don't get me wrong, Drake streaming numbers are absurd. It's ridiculous. If you really sit down and look at the streaming numbers, he is so far above everyone else, it does not make sense. He is a global phenomenon. He is a household name in places that don't even have internet. But yet, Michael Jackson did this without the internet. So is it more impressive? Does it give it more leverage?
I think in that exact example, yes.
That's a very specific one.
Yeah, that's a very specific example. But
those are the two biggest names you can think of, at least in our generation. Who's bigger than Drake?
Sure. Well, it depends on also to who, like there are absolutely two people who, if I'm using the examples of the two bands I listed, Aerosmith and AC/DC, there are certainly a lot of people to those groups would be a lot more, immediate.
Bigger names,
maybe not more than Michael Jackson, but certainly way more than Drake. Like,
right. And again, this is crossing genres, so we're talking about everybody.
Yeah, and industries even in a way.
Because for example, some of the bands you just named, I know the bands, but I don't know the AC/DC, Metallica, any other name, Aerosmith that you guys came up with. These are people before 2000s, correct?
Yeah, so like
AC/DC
and Aerosmith.
So are these even modern people? That's what I'm saying. Like, those are before the internet
and that's
really existed.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get across here is like the two genres are not directly comparable because one we're going on 100 years of history, maybe a little more than, and has existed long before the internet with very different means of distribution and listening. Like, radio has been such a factor in the history of rock and roll that just has not existed for hip hop in the same way. And so has the pressure or the development of the label industry as just a force for distribution of music. Your distribution channels back then, word of mouth, just started to develop more so, but like if you're looking at music from like the 50s, you're looking at labels giving music to radio stations playing said music. That's your distribution channel. So there's a much narrower frame of reference for people who are interested in music at that time, with the exception of just localized, what people are playing down at the corner store or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's just such a difference between these. I think it is more impressive now if an artist did say have that kind of status then, because they not only were, promoted by a label, but then that somehow managed to grow a following that was less organic at the start, but then became organic, because that's kind of like the trajectory when you don't have the internet to, snowball things. That being said, I think consumers today are much more savvy and much more, careful with their time. So I think if albums that do have lots of filler, for example, become popular now, it's more concerning because maybe people don't recognize, the album for what it may be. But, I think it's easier to fall down the hole of this is really good music because I like it and because the radio said it was good in 1975 than it is in 2023.
I think everything you say is 100% correct. I do think though, like an album as like a creative work, I do think like you can kind of remove every as much as you can of that. Especially, I think you talk about distribution and consumption and everything. I think especially those economic factors. I think if we're going to be comparing across any genres, I think we just kind of have to omit those and just talk
Yeah.
about like top line, like the creative, you know.
Yeah.
So
No,
like
that's
that's
valid.
and that's like really what I'm getting at. I don't deny that uh the internet revolution, even decades before streaming took off, like I don't deny the impact that had. But I just think like creatively, like there are some trends that I think occur regardless of the conditions that they are created.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
You know, let's move on to the second one because we're
Let's
already at
do it.
2 hours.
Yeah. Let's keep moving.
My next one.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, I'm fine. We may have to take a break, but
We might
I'm
just have to edit this down a little bit too.
I
We'll
think
see.
I think we'll be fine. I'm the one who has to deal with the upload, so I'm not worried.
Sure.
We haven't had to cut much, so
No, we're good. My next
Alice
one,
in Chains.
Alice in Chains, from the album Dirt, a fundamental grunge album. So grunge was a movement from the early '90s. Most popular band in grunge is by far Nirvana.
Yes.
I'm sure you've heard of Nirvana. I'm sure you know of Kurt Cobain, right? This is my person. I mean, besides Nirvana, because I do love Nirvana. Who doesn't? But like, besides Nirvana, I think this is probably the best grunge bands. I think their willingness to delve into really specifically dark kind of territory and the way the music reinforces that, like we always talk about, like with the Griselda record, how like the cold chilling elements of the beat like reinforce like the killer bars. I think it's a similar phenomenon here where like the darkness of the music compacts the darkness of the songs, right, of the lyrics. And the three songs I chose, I thought gave like a pretty. I chose three for this one because I felt like I couldn't break it down to just two. I chose Them Bones, which I think posits one of the most existentially terrifying questions of all time, which is just like, how do you deal with the fact that even if you believe in an afterlife, this body that you experience your world through, like, will one day just be a pile of bones? And it's just like, oh, that's
eye opening.
That's because it's true. Like Purvis, when you
say
die
that,
and go to
that is
heaven,
true, regardless
like,
of religion.
like,
that is true.
Yeah, and it's like
my body will be left.
yeah, like, and then you have Rooster, which is a about the Vietnam War, and I always really love the title because it comes from how in Vietnam they don't have eagles, so the 151st Airborne, they have eagles on their straps. So
That's
the
pretty
Viet
cool.
Cong, they don't know what eagles are. So they would point at it and call them roosters. So when they say like, "Oh,
That's actually pretty cool.
yeah," so when they say "Here comes the rooster," they're talking about like the American forces. And then Wood, which is about heroin addiction, which ultimately took the life of the frontman of Alice in Chains, right?
Oh,
And I love the darkness. What can I say? Like I don't want to break down. I want to get you guys' reactions to this.
Alice in Chains. I would say out of the three that I knew the least. I will say the third person. I actually knew them. I knew the whole album.
I knew that.
But Alice
Yeah.
in Chains. If your take is like dark, definitely felt that. It was hard for me to kind of grasp the gravity of everything because like I didn't know the backstory. Everything you just said about like breaking down Vietnam War and cocaine and all this other stuff, like I did not know it went that deep. I feel like this is the concept album that I was looking for previously.
Yeah, because it just deals with those dark questions. And like I was looking at the lyrics like while I was like suggesting these, and it's crazy because like Them Bones, like it has like maybe 22 songs, like 22 words. Like it just has a very sparse amount of actual lyrics, and it gets that that very existential issue across. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a really dope like idea that even exists because I do recall when you had me listen to Metallica, that was one thing that I pointed out where I was like, it's not much words. Like it's a lot of just instrumental like feelings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jazz.
Jasper, how'd you feel about it?
I like
I'm
this
sure
one.
you're familiar. Yeah.
I'm familiar with Alice in Chains. It takes me back to the glory days of playing, Man in the Box on Rock Band 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like it a lot. I think that I think this is as close as you can get to metal in the grunge genre without spilling over, and I think that that's dope
100%.
because it's
100%
unique.
agree. Yeah.
I don't think anything really comes close. I think that the only thing that keeps this from being metal is like the speed and the vocal energy being very low, as opposed to
Yeah.
if it were raised and if it were faster, I think it would make super solid metal. Um, but yeah, I really liked them bones. Rooster was good. I didn't necessarily pick up on the meeting just listening to it through because I was pretty focused on
Yeah.
the instrumentation, but and also with that vocal style, it's difficult to pick things out unless you're really listening to it. For me, so,
100%. Yeah, I'm not gonna
yeah,
hold anyone against that. I forget the dude's name. He's an incredible singer, but like he's
Yeah.
particularly hard to pull the words apart.
yes, but I think that's kind of the style. Grunge has that kind of slurry effect. Look at like Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed the three, and I think Wood honestly has like very unique instrumentation for what I would expect on an Alice in Chains project.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a sucker for a killer bass line.
Yeah, it's got that.
And it's got that, like it's and like, that's what I love about it. And like, yeah. I don't really got much more else to say about this one. I think it speaks for itself.
Definitely.
Yeah, the next one I had shown Purvis this before.
Rise Against,
Rise
It's
Against.
funny enough. I know Rise Against, like even before you.
Yeah, well, they're a
It's
local band,
white
so,
friends
like,
from high school, but
yeah.
I was about to say I think it's because
Yeah.
they're a Chicago band.
Yeah, they're one of my favorite bands of all time. It's a band I felt like I don't talk about a lot on the show, despite being one of my favorite bands of all time. So I wanted to use this as an opportunity just to talk about them.
Mhm.
The thing is, like, whereas Rise Against, I do think the albums do work as like albums. I think they have a small case of that playlistification kind of issue going on.
Yeah.
Where like they're, you put a playlist of all the great Rise Against songs on, it's a really long playlist. But with a few exceptions, I don't really listen to their albums all the way through. But this one just had so many just gems of like 2008 era like hardcore punk. And the other thing is that like I like political messaging in my music. I like music that is a call to action. I like music that is meant to illuminate and provocate. I've learned a lot about the world that I feel like is kind of kept from us through listening to music and like the questions and like answering the questions the music pose. And that's why I recommended this. Yeah, the song's Re-Education Through Labor, which is pretty intense title, and then Audience of One, which I felt like when we were talking earlier about Purvis talking about how rock is just like this great venue for live performance. This song is an example, I think, of that really working because it scales so well. Like it feels like so big, but then you listen to a version of this song where it's just the guy on guitar, just like one guy with the acoustic guitar, and it's great. It's like,
I fully agree, honestly. Everything you said wraps it up perfectly. Luckily enough, I do know Rise Against prior to actually like you pulling this here. I've enjoyed their music for a while. Obviously, I feel like because I have that outside view, I don't understand the concept as much, or I don't pick up on it immediately while listening to it. But like now that you break it down, that way, like I can absolutely see everything you just said, like occurring in these albums.
yeah.
So I enjoyed it at least.
Excellent.
Jasper, did you already know the man?
Yeah, I'm familiar. I liked it too. I really like Audience of One. I think of the two tracks, that's my preferred. But I gotta say, I know comparing artists is tough and not always fair, but I think personally, of the three that you brought for artists and albums, I think that this is my least favorite of the three. Not from a negative standpoint, but just because I think that the vocal performances on, Alice in Chains and Alabama Shakes outshine this a little bit in that sense.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I have a very high opinion of Tim, the singer of Rise Against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you put him against the singer from Alice in Chains and Brittany Howard from he's third every single time.
Yeah.
So like I have a fairly high opinion of dude, but yeah, that's completely fair.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think that it's just that like when you put them up against something that sounds that unique, it kind of almost makes it feel less special than it is when it is like very technically skilled. But I agree with what you said about the playlist effect, and I think that the more modern equivalent of that at this point right now, I think that Fall Out Boy has experienced that exact same thing on a smaller scale.
100%.
And also, local kind of fan favorite type deal.
Yeah.
Playlist effect, 100%. You've
100%.
got like hits that go on the playlist, and that's it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I listened to their last album, Mania, and I'm like, I like 2 of these songs. And I listen to those 2 songs probably once a week. Have not opened up that album's not even in my library. Like.
Yeah.
I'm actually I'm curious, but before we finish talking about rock, there actually is an album coming out this week. Paramore is coming out with This Is Why.
So
is Paramore rock?
Paramore is rock. They're kind of like more poppy punk kind of thing. And Hayley Williams definitely makes it skew a lot more towards pop. But they're a very well-respected pop punk crew.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
all right. Shall we move on, Jasper, to your next genre, which had me feeling some type of way. This was a fun one.
I gotta say, of the 3 genres that I picked, the projects in this genre mean the most to me of the 3. In terms of like my overall, with the exception of like one later on, overall life and like listening time, these definitely take the cake. So my second genre is just like electronic, and I've got a couple different picks, 2 albums by the same group and then 1 that's independent. So my first pick was the album Aleph by Gesaffelstein. And Gesaffelstein is an artist who I think has just not received his flowers, despite having, I think, a really profound impact on the industry as a whole, and also on just like the kind of like the way that music has shifted over the last 10 years. So for those of you who don't know, Gesaffelstein is this very, very intense electronic, almost industrial electronic artist who makes a lot of purely instrumental music. And that was one of the driving influences. And he also served as a producer for Yeezus, which is one of my favorite hip hop albums, regardless of what's happened currently with Kanye and everything going on. I think Yeezus as an album, it is impossible to overstate the effect it had on like my tastes and preferences when it came to music, because that was the point where I made the shift from, my beautiful dark twisted fantasy is the gold standard for what I like because it's all of X, Y, and Z, and went to Yeezus in that.
It's perfect.
Yeah, but then going to Yeezus in all that it isn't, and how the negative space makes an album. You can say more with saying less sometimes, and that's where I kind of have sat ever since that in this channel of like, I really value music and projects where you can say a lot with very little, both musically and vocally, which is Pusha T and everything that derives from that I enjoy. I think comes from that. Gesaffelstein produced a lot of tracks on Yeezus, and if you look at the album artwork for Aleph, Yeezus' album artwork is directly ripped or influenced by
it literally is
Aleph's album artwork. And this is one of the goddamn hardest albums I've ever heard. Yeah. I hope when you guys listen to it, just hearing Pursuit after coming out of the D4, it's like, man, you thought the D4 went hard? Listen to this shit, because it's something totally different. Nothing else sounds like it. And it's good for anything. I listen to it when I'm biking, working out, just like doing chores, like whatever. It hits for me. So I hope you guys kind of took something from it aside from it being just like super aggressive.
Dude, I liked it a lot. I had a very different takeaway from it. So the first thing I want to bring up actually is just because you're right. The cover is such a take on Yeezus.
I didn't
But
even know until
but
you just said that, bro.
So
but
yeah, this came out first, and
No,
then
this came out
Yeezus
Yeah,
second.
of course. Yeah.
This came out after.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. So no, the projects were worked on like at the same time,
Yeah.
but
Oh, but one was released after
this
that.
cover art was first, and then Virgil and Kanye worked
Yeah.
the Yeezus art after this.
Yeah, because
God, I miss Virgil.
Jesus came out like 4 months earlier.
Yeah,
But yeah, I gotta be honest. My first takeaway from this was like, this is some sex club music. This is like real dark, real thumpy, and like the thing is that like I loved it a lot. Like, dude, don't get it's very like pulsing.
I fuck with some heavy synth, dude. I have a
Bro,
playlist.
I'm sitting here thinking about like the Samurai Jack scene in the future. He's in a nightclub, and I just picture this album just going to.
I have a playlist called Power Synth that's full of shit like this. All right.
So like, don't get
This
me
is
wrong,
what I picture
like,
Amsterdam. It's like
Not Atlanta.
this is the red light district.
This sounds like cool hell. Like
it's Doom. It's the music from Doom for people who don't just want to listen to pure metal.
yeah, no, it's and like to me, like I didn't have like a very minimal reaction to this. I thought it was like white maximal in a way, but I loved it. I loved how like the vibe is like immediate. I think of all the albums that like we sampled, like between the 18 I got between you and Purvis, this is the one I'm most eager to go back and listen to in its entirety.
Yeah.
So I
gotta say,
like this a lot.
Yeah, the minimal section, I guess, doesn't necessarily apply as much to the tracks that I picked, but there are a lot of tracks that kind of reside in between these that definitely take the energy down before letting it build back up. So
That's
like
cool,
there's a track called Wall of Memories that's
Yeah.
very minimal. That kind of serves as almost like an interlude, but it's almost 4 minutes long.
Yeah,
And that's like
Breather.
very calm, compared. And so there are like these moments of just like kind of drifting through space almost in the sense of like where the album goes.
I will probably be listening to this in an hour when we're done with this episode.
Mwah.
But
So good.
no, it is easily, not to insult the rest of everyone's music, but it's easily the one I'm most eager to go and listen to. But yeah, it felt like in a good way, in a way I enjoyed. It felt like a wall of sound.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Purvis, what did you think?
So
Questions, comments, vicious attacks?
no attacks. You bringing up Yeezus definitely changed my perspective.
Yeah, this guy, like Yeezus' entire sound is based around the sound that this guy pioneered.
This is literally, it's insane. The connection, just because I don't know of a lot of albums that blend between hip hop and electric music. Like of course there are a select few, but this would definitely stand out as one that is unique to me. In the first listening to it, it's a lot of energy, and I feel like the high energy things that like I'm used to, that you're also familiar with, is like Yeet. That's what I think of like high energy.
But
So it's
can you
interesting,
see-
like getting this.
Can you see the progress where it's like something like this that influences Yeezus that then creates a love of mine for like hip hop that has industrial sound, and then like Yeet being like a pop extension of that. It's like there's like a direct kind of chain.
Yes, I fully am picturing everything together. Like throw in some Playboy Cardi.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely fits in the bridge. Like
100%.
I now see how it's all flowing within each other. So I definitely appreciate this a lot more now, bridging the gaps between the genres.
Yeah, so
I'll go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
I don't know if either of you are on a Kanye pause, but if you just go listen to like New Slaves and like the way New Slave
I love
sounds
New Slaves
is
so much.
is directly like the
Yeah.
synth. Everything about the instrumentation on that is this pretty
Yeah.
much. Like this album is an extension.
All right.
Also, the opening track, just like straight up, that super intense synth at the start. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Well,
Moving
tell me
on.
about Daft Punk, the extremely well-known artist.
Yeah. These albums I'm very familiar with, and they're classics. They are
and I had
Just the
undeniable.
name, I feel like I know them.
I had to include them. I couldn't I couldn't otherwise.
Spoiler alert, not the only time we're going to talk about Daft Punk. Like,
Yeah, believe me. um, Probably, yeah, definitely the most listening time of anything else on this list for me are these two albums. Uh, first things first, we're going to talk Discovery. Discovery is, in my opinion, one of, if not the greatest album of the 21st century so far. Just throwing it out there as far as like that genre and also just music in general for me.
it's a respectable take.
Yeah, there's just nothing else like it. Nobody did it like this before. No one's really done it like this afterwards. You're talking it's like to me it's like the Nevermind of the genre in that every song hits. It's got accompanying media that is just like super super good, and you have this. It's like this sound that just never ages. I feel like Nirvana in that way has captured a very timeless sound within grunge.
Yeah.
I think that Daft Punk did that specifically for the genre, for electronic and dance at the time.
Yeah.
And I picked One More Time and Aerodynamic because those are the starter tracks off the album and they flow directly into each other. And yeah, do yourself a favor, everybody who's listening right now, watch Interstellar 5555 if you have not.
I watched
because
that
is
like 2 months ago. It's so
Yeah.
good. It's so much fun.
That is a project, fully animated music film that goes along directly with the album and ties in directly with everything. So it takes a project that has basically no narrative on its own and supplements a narrative over it and does it in just this really beautiful, well tied in way. Something just, ahead of its time, I think.
I
honestly think both albums. I get the same vibes from both albums, and just the name alone, I don't even have to know what electric music is or have any experience prior to this. I know who Daft Punk is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's such a
I know who Daft
staple.
Punk is.
If you listened to Kanye at any point in the 2010s, you know who Daft Punk is because Stronger exists.
Yeah, exactly. That will be the direct connection to the podcast. But just in general, like I just feel like if you enjoy music, if you are alive and have touched grass, you know what Daft Punk is.
Yeah.
and it's hard to not enjoy this music.
And like Daft Punk just feels like a celebration of like music itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it is.
So
they managed to do that with every project in a different way. I feel
because like I even think Ram is a really really strong project. Like I go back and forth on like if I like Ram or Discovery more.
Me too, to be honest. I think that Discovery as like a pure distillation of what this genre is like perfect.
Yeah.
I think Ram is very much a love letter to the music that influenced them.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah, and I also think Discovery is probably a little bit more innovative. Even though like
oh, for sure.
Yeah, even though I think all of Daft Punk's stuff is like innovative in a way, like they just completely set the tone for early 2000s for everything good, by the way. And like when you get to Human After All, like Human After All and Homework, like to me I have them in like they're like an A tier. They're not S tier to me, but they're A tier.
Yeah.
But you picked like some tracks that like Human After All is one of the projects I forget about. Like I know it exists, but like
Human After All does not get the flowers it deserves. This album was panned when it came out because people were expecting Discovery Part 2. And Daft Punk did what they do, which is pivot and make something new. And that brings me to what's up?
Sorry, I was actually that's one thing I was actually going to talk about because don't get me wrong, I enjoyed everything between the samples that I've heard from both albums. I've enjoyed everything I've heard from Daft Punk.
Yeah.
Now, what I would say, as someone as an outsider, Random Access Memories, I know way more than the other two.
Yeah. Well, it came out when we were
the
most streamed to discover music.
Yeah, the other ones just came out like pretty like when you were probably like 9.
I was 5.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so it's more of a timing thing,
I would,
or is it better?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people I know who like fucked with Daft Punk like at the time of Discovery, like I know most of those people also love Ram. Like it's not like it's like a millennial thing to prefer that one, but yeah, no, it's certainly timing. Like Discovery was a moment when it dropped.
Okay, so someone who's gone back, Jasper. I am forced to rank things like Kendrick albums and J.
Yes.
Cole albums.
Yes.
Ranked all of their albums here.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best? What's the worst? What should be excluded? Because there's normally at least one.
Are we talking about these 3 Daft Punk albums, or are we talking about everything together? Because there are more.
The ones that matter.
The ones that matter.
Yeah.
Like in reality. Because okay, don't get me wrong, all of Kendrick Lamar's albums matter. But if you ask me like rank J. Cole's album, if you tell me to like throw in the sideline story or like the beginning stuff, it's gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna put it last. Just naturally.
Yeah.
If you tell me to rank Drake albums, I'm not gonna care about one of the EPs that came out in 2022, or 2020. It doesn't matter.
Like Care Package.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's tough. I mean, let me pull up the discography just so I can actually like, look at everything here.
Because I know they did Tron, which I'm assuming we're gonna get to later.
Well, so for the sake of simplicity, I'm gonna exclude live albums from this. Although Alive 2007 is probably, in my opinion, also the best live album of all time. Yeah, I know it's a take.
I personally like Forest Hill Drive, but I mean,
no live album.
No, like live.
Like a performance live that was was recorded at a.
No, there is one on Spotify. Forest Hill Drive.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know that.
Really good. It's really good.
Okay, so if I had to rank them, going from I'd say top to bottom, for me personally, it's going to be Discovery at 1, and then it's going to be Random Access Memories, slightly eking out Human After All, but only by just the slightest of margins, just because I think looking at their career now that they've separated, Random Access Memories really is the perfect send-off in a way. After that, I would have to put the Tron Legacy soundtrack, because that project is, in so many ways just timeless in a way that the film is not. And it's really interesting to see a score from a film really, really outlive the media that it was made to accompany. That's just something that you don't see, and I think that that's super commendable. After that, I'd put Homework. Homework is extremely important in like what not even French house, but just, French club music was and then became, and also like they kind of pioneered a sound there as well. But I don't think it has the staying power, because it is very much bops to put on in the background that are purely instrumental and don't feature the complexity of a lot of things that came later.
Yeah. It's the one that's like least refined for their sounds.
Yeah, and it's their first like full album made available, so it kind of shows. But then just below that, in my opinion, and I think this is controversial with people who are really into Daft Punk, I would put Daft Club below that, to be honest. Daft Club is basically a remix album where they published a list of remixes of songs from Discovery as done by all these different artists and put it together in a collection. It came out 2 years after Discovery. I think that there's some fine work on here. Not everything lands, and I don't think it has the cultural capital or the mass appeal that even Homework did as something that was less refined, just because it came out at a point where people were excited to hear what the next new thing by Daft Punk was, not a remix collection. So for me, I would put that last.
That's totally
interesting.
Fair.
But yeah, that's my list.
All right.
I'm literally looking at it. Didn't know it was even a French duo.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Guy Manuel de Omem Cristo and Thomas Bengaltier are the two guys. And I probably butchered that. I'm sorry, but those are the two boys. They've been around forever ridiculous. And made some incredible things together. So my favorite duo of all time.
They're really quite something special.
I know people love Outkast, but for me, my favorite duo of all time. I know.
Daft Punk is probably the best one I've heard besides Outkast. I'll keep it real.
I was gonna say, if you're gonna put competition to Outkast, you came appropriately.
Yeah, Daft Punk really is like the best one. Purvis, do we want to do alternative R&B?
Yes.
Now this
is real quick. Can I just say another word about Human After All, because we didn't really talk about that one.
Yeah. Sure.
I just want to say, like, it didn't get its, like I said, it didn't get its flowers. It went in like a harder, more industrial path that people didn't like at the time, but I think it's really aged well, and there's a lot of cuts on there that people overlook, which is why I picked Make Love as like a very low-key track, but one that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
One that's really beautiful though, like when you listen to it, even out of the context of the album, and just an album worth going back and listening to again, just knowing what we know now and how we feel about the space that, you know, even hip hop is in, using some of these raw, angrier sounds. This kind of has a place in that, in my opinion.
But
yeah,
definitely.
Okay. I'm gonna dive into some more Daft Punk then.
Yeah. No, Daft Punk.
Yeah. Do yourself a favor.
All right, bet. Well, I will go ahead and jump into alternative R&B. I'll go through this a little bit quicker, just because like I feel like all these names we all know.
Yeah.
Um,
It was nice
I'm
to
not-
be able to like actually sit down and listen to them though.
Yes, it was. It's a nice refresher, and I wanted to include all three of these albums because I think the artists themselves are fairly familiar to those who are even just within hip hop, the original genre of the podcast. I'm not gonna lie, Brandon made me change Frank Ocean Blonde for
We talk about Frank Ocean all the time.
I would
about to say,
consider that to have enough elements of hip hop on it to be considered like an R&B hip hop
exactly.
album.
Yeah.
And that's why we didn't include it, because we have preached Blonde far too much and we want to spare our listeners.
Yeah.
So I went into my bag and I wanted to discuss Sampha.
I'm so happy you brought in Sampha. Like I am very, because I wept listening to "No One Knows Me Like the Piano."
So yeah, that's actually what I was gonna get into, because I feel like R&B is almost a lost art in our generation. It's almost always alternative R&B, because I feel like traditional R&B is very. When I think about R&B, there's two major R&Bs. There's love making, and then that is like very straightforward in terms of the purpose of the genre. And then there's moments appreciating, where it's just like it's more about making a moment, which I feel alternative R&B is more focused on when it's not toxic. So I try to avoid all of the toxic alternative R&B. And the first one I want to talk about is Sampha. If you do not know who Sampha is, you are incorrect. You definitely know who he is, because he has been featured. Exactly. He has been featured with so many artists that I know you listen to, whether it be Beyonce, Kendrick Lamar last year, Frank Ocean, who I just mentioned, Kanye. The list goes on. Sampha is probably one of the most talented singers in the music industry. I would push it that far, just because he has a very unique sound. He does not have a long discography himself, but he has released the album Process. And I wanted to include this one because, like I said, it's not that traditional R&B. So if you are not one that's fond with love and things of that topic, because that's a real thing, that people literally just feel different. They feel love different ways. This is a very unique example of R&B that's more passionate, that isn't exactly saying like I love you, but can translate it in different formats. And so the sample songs that I threw in here for the playlist is Nobody Knows Me Like the Piano. This song is so powerful, and it's very simplistic. It's everything you want to bring out an emotion. Even Brandon, you text me the other day, which I did not expect you to be like, this song almost made me cry. And like, that's good. That's the emotion I feel like you should get out of R&B. So I threw that one in there. I threw in Timmy's Prayer in there as well, because the unique thing about Sampha, he also falls underneath neo soul. He falls underneath a touch of electronic. So it's a very unique perspective on R&B. So that's why I wanted to include this one.
I love it. I mean, Sampha is one of those artists where it's like, I always think to myself, damn, I want to actually sit down and listen to this guy. And then I sit down to listen to music, and you know what I never do? Listen to Sampha. Like,
yeah, it's a refresher. It's something unique.
So being able to actually listen, like to actually sit down and like listen to his vision for his songs, because I only know them through other people's work.
Right.
This dude is,
you can appreciate
a talent, like undeniably.
Jasper, do you have any thoughts on Sampha? That I'm assuming you know who it was prior to this anyway.
Yeah, I recognize his voice instantly. He's got like such a recognizable
Yeah.
style. Nobody sounds like him, which I think is a huge strength.
And it's also like
Um,
it's hard to put your finger on. I don't think there's like a single adjective you can use to describe his voice to help someone figure it out.
the only way I can describe it is like round or like full. It's got
Fair, fair,
like
yeah.
a full quality to it where it's like the voice itself has body, but also range. Like he's got like I guess he can put on the intensity on like certain syllables, but he can do it while changing range or like pitch, which is impressive.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I liked both of them a lot. No One Knows Me Like the Piano is intense. Like I
it's
wasn't,
strong.
I don't know if I was at a point where I was like really moved by it, but I recognize that it is a track that is worth listening to and just like dropping things to listen to. It's not like you're multitasking. It has that kind of energy again, like Blonde has for me, where it's like I can't do something else while I'm listening to it. I have to focus on that thing.
Yeah. No,
Like
it was stunning, like in that way. Like
yeah,
literally stunning. Like
yeah. Like you try to read or like do something else when it comes on, you just kind of stop because you're like trying to hear everything. And
Mhm.
that's something that I come across a lot in music like this, which is a great benefit. It's a bonus.
Yeah, I was about to say an artist that can make you stop and think. Those are the ones that I appreciate the most.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so that was actually going to be my first one. The second one I wanted to go over is someone signed to TDE. It is Sir. I feel like this is my personal alternative R&B album. I feel like a lot of people who do dive into R&B, they have one that they attach to. I know, like for example, Brandon, The Weeknd could be yours. Like the trilogy would be something that you attach to. The Weeknd is the definition of alternative R&B. For me, it is Sir November. I feel like the entire sound of the album, it just scratched the itch that I had in my head. It's exactly what I wanted. I included Something Foreign, which features Schoolboy Q.
yeah.
Has a perfect touch of that West Coast feel, but it's still R&B. Like I've mentioned so many times, like R&B and hip hop are basically intertwined nowadays anyway. Some of the best albums for hip hop you will get singing in it. And I feel like Sir is the perfect like collaboration piece to a hip hop album. I think his voice is very unique. I think the way he portrays his message of love is very unique. I like I said previously, the genres that I picked obviously were gospel and R&B. Those are my both my twos. Obviously hip hop is one, gospel and R&B is tied for second. Like bringing out an emotion is exactly what I look for in music.
Yeah.
And I feel like he does an excellent job in doing that. And even in the second song, War, you can portray a whole story of him and his girl going back and forth about him traveling and put this into the album and have it fit with the larger picture and have this unique scale of how love works for them. I just love R&B in the album in general.
No, yeah.
Have you all heard Sir previously? Because I got to see him live, so
I was familiar, yeah.
I'm fully in.
I was not. I had never come across his work, so this was something new for me entirely.
But
Yeah, no, I've heard of him, but not super like, oh, I'm gonna consciously listen to this guy. And like, yeah, no, it seemed like with Something Foreign, like my big takeaway was like, wow, what a cool way to blend like that West Coast Cali sound uh with the R&B, because like I think he did a great job with that.
yeah,
I
fully
agree.
agree.
I personally did prefer War to Something Foreign, just because I think the structuring of the beat to me was a little more appealing. But I think they're both super solid and just delivery and almost I don't know, something about the instrumentation almost has like that kind of like lo-fi aesthetic to
Yes,
me. And
yes.
that's interesting because I feel like a lot of lo-fi music tends to be cast aside because it's not something that a lot of people will actively listen to, but more so just put on as something to have in the background.
Yeah,
Hmm.
This makes you pay attention in an interesting way.
yeah,
So I like that
Yep.
a lot.
Yep. It's definitely one of the few R&B albums that does dive into lo-fi, so that's a great point as well. Um, but to close it out with my third one, I think this one is the most popular out of the three that I
Yeah.
selected. Daniel Caesar, I've mentioned him actually recently within the podcast as he has recently dropped a single. Phenomenal. Um, Personally, I am a fan. I know there is some controversy about him in the past, but Daniel Caesar, it's one of those that it's perfect. He's a big name for a reason. If you go back to his discography, Freudian is one of the most successful alternative R&B albums I want to say at the time. Best Part featuring her has almost 1 billion streams now. It is basically an iconic staple to wedding like ceremonies now. Like you literally, you made it as an R&B artist when you're in like a lot of weddings. Like you're a staple for a wedding. You are the definition of love. That is success.
Yeah.
Right.
So Best Part stood out to me. And I wanted to include that as one of my examples. And then Hold Me Down, personally, without getting too deep into it, I've cried to Hold Me Down. I feel like once you find a really good R&B song that directly correlates to you, it can break you down. It can really hit the right
That's fair,
spots.
yeah.
And this is why I just love the genre in general. And I think the album as a whole is extremely successful. I will say it's front heavy. A lot of the best songs are in the front, but if you can get through the album, it's gonna hit something. You're gonna think about an X or something.
Yeah, I mean, I probably had the most lukewarm reaction to any artist to this one. Now,
Really?
I did think Daniel Caesar was like a talented singer. Like I definitely came away listening to these two songs because I didn't like listen to the entire albums. I had others.
We had a lot of
Yeah,
albums
we
to
had a
get
lot to
through.
listen to this week.
Yeah.
But I was impressed with his like individual talent. I was not overall super impressed with like either of the songs. It felt very generic R&B, to me. So like
That's fair.
I'm not saying he's awful. I'm not saying he's even bad or talentless. It was just like it just came across a little bit generic to me. I can understand why Best Part is like a wedding song. Like that makes a lot of sense in the world. So like I thought Sampha and Sir are just like very dynamic, interesting takes on R&B. And
This is more traditional.
this is like more traditional. I even like wonder because like I know outside the purview of this conversation, I know other people consider Daniel Caesar a an alternative R&B artist, right? But like listening to it, I was like, "Is this dude like what's?" I don't see.
It's just really
what's
just normal R&B.
alternative about this,
Right.
You know?
No, yeah, that's fair, especially for the whole album. That is
Yeah.
actually very fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with pretty much most of that. Although I found that the instrumentation wasn't super memorable, but I did fixate on the voice. And to me, and this may sound ignorant, someone who doesn't listen to R&B a whole lot, but it sounds to me like, from what I took away, Daniel Caesar's main appeal is that he offers something adjacent to Frank Ocean's vocal styling, while Frank is MIA. That's what it kind of sounds like to me. Like a lot of his
Interesting.
his inflections, especially towards the later half of "Hold Me Down," the way he kind of he'll do this like dip and then rise vocally that really sounds a lot like stuff that Frank does on Blonde. And even some of the instrumentation on these tracks reminds me a little bit of some things off of like early Channel Orange.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good take. I had never really.
Yeah.
Now, I will say a lot of times with R&B in terms of comparing just like quality of voices
It's
because
tough. Yeah.
it's so much more impactful in that genre.
Yeah.
People mention Frank Ocean versus Daniel Caesar versus like The Weeknd and things like that. So that's
Yeah.
a great comparison.
Yeah.
If
That's
you
what
make
I
that
drew,
connection.
but I really didn't want to commit to this being like that real fun meme from a couple years ago when Parasite came out, where it's like white guy who has only seen two Korean things. In many ways, Squid Game is like Parasite. Like
Yeah.
I was really
Things
trying to
are
not be
connected.
that guy, but that is just something that I noticed.
Yeah.
So
I
No,
definitely
yeah. I think that's a fine take.
yeah, no, it definitely had like a very minimal appeal, which I feel like is especially with Blonde, like kind of comes across. And like I think his singing has a different a similar style But overall, like, I did not walk away from Daniel Caesar being like, this is Frank Ocean, or even like this is a worse version of Frank Ocean. You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
For me, it was like there were parallels.
Yeah,
I could
no,
see
I
like
see where
people
you're
comparisons.
I see where
people
you're
who
coming
might
from.
like Frank.
Yeah.
It's that if you liked blank, you might like blank. Like
Yeah.
that kind of effect.
Yeah,
100%.
definitely.
He just doesn't.
If you go to Daniel Caesar's page, Frank Ocean would come up as like, oh,
Yeah.
people also listen to.
Yeah.
100%.
I just didn't get I did not get the sense, and I do not get the sense from the way people talk about Daniel Caesar that he is a daring artist the way Frank Ocean is.
He is highly praised in the R&B just like section.
I know like by talent, right? I know like by like singing ability, but like is he the kind of guy to go to the studio and think of pyramids or knights?
Is he the kind of guy to sell you a $15,000 cock ring?
Yeah. Where's Daniel
It's just
Caesar's
like,
cock rings?
How much are we going to compare to Frank Ocean?
Yeah.
Just like
Yes, everything.
I will say, as someone who tries to be as much involved as he can with alternative R&B in terms of male artists, you are correct. You will think of a Frank Ocean, you will think of a Daniel Caesar, you'll think of a Brett Faiyaz, you'll think of The Weeknd. All of these kind of go within their own circle. Even Miguel's a little bit older, but I think he does fall within the genre. I think he was before his time.
I know. I know. Like people say, like, "Oh, The Weeknd like really crystallized it with the trilogy," but I think Miguel created alternative R&B.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe even as far as to say he was before his time, because he is very impactful in terms of developing that sound. You think of Party Next Door.
Yeah,
people like that. All these people are included, but absolutely, Daniel Caesar is one of the large names you definitely should know if you like the genre.
100%.
But yeah, that is those are my three.
All right,
for,
ready to move on
R&B?
to synth pop?
I am ready.
Are we ready to vibe extremely, unreasonably hard?
I vibed hard as fuck to these. These made it onto my liked.
Yeah, these are some vibes. Just feeling them right off the bone. So before
it's just funny because like I know how much you love these albums because you made me listen to them already.
First off, like you were in my apartment and one Kavinsky song that's not on this album, mind you, came on and it featured The Weeknd, and you just looked at me like you just saw you.
It's good.
You were like,
it's really good.
You were like, is this what you were
clicked.
talking about? And it was like I just introduced you to E.T. You were like,
Bro,
this is it? Like,
you know how I feel anytime I hear like an artist I love in a music I didn't like expect. Stop everything. When I listened to Astroworld the first time Frank Ocean comes on, pull the car over and get out. It was just like, so yes. When I hear The Weeknd come on Kavinsky, I was just like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
It's like, this slaps.
Yeah, but needless to say, like there's no big name like The Weeknd on these three songs. These are from Kavinsky's album last year, Reborn, which I wanted to bring in because I think it's like the perfect synth pop album. And the other thing is like just as like a genre expectation is that like there's synth pop to me is just like pop music made with exclusively with synthesizers and like that kind of thing. There's also like a very popular genre called synthwave, which is a lot more like ambient but like has like a very similar texture, right? So I picked Reborn just because like I think this is like the closest thing to like, oh, this is synth pop in an album format, like that really hits. So the three songs I brought in were Renegade, Plasma, and Cameo, and I just think these songs are just like, I think they're some of the best pop songs made in years. I think they just call back from like this time when like the stuff that was on the radio had an element of craft to it just because that's all there really was. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no. So this was my most listened to album last year by a country mile. Like,
yeah, I know. It's a great album. I will take. When you first told me, it took me a while to dive into it. Once I finally got to appreciate Kavinsky, I understand. I completely understand. The drive home from your house on LSD. Normally it'll be Blonde. That time was Kavinsky. It was very much worth the change up. It is a phenomenal album.
Yeah.
Just a little bit faster. I'm already going 80. I'm going to go 90.
Yeah, I messed with this. In the past, I haven't been the biggest fan of vocal mixing on Kavitsky. I think a lot of the time his vocals tend to be a little dry.
Especially on like the Outrun, the album with
Yeah, like
Nightfall.
Odd Look and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Kind
Odd
of
Look
like
is like exactly that. The version of Odd Look with The Weeknd is the one Purvis listened to.
yeah, like the original version. I think just the vocals
Is
for me didn't hit, but
yeah.
this feels like a far improvement over that.
Yeah.
Like it just feels fresh. I really liked Plasma and Cameo. Those are my favorites. I think Renegade is a close third. Um, but yeah, just super strong. And this is another genre that I tend to really get into. I'm like, this is like one step away from like my heavier synth, like
Yeah.
dark synth stuff that I like. So yeah, super solid. And yeah, I've been a fan since Drive came out. So like, this was just another day at the office for me. I was like, all right, we getting lit today.
I definitely agree. But yeah, Purvis, did you just? Is it just driving music to you?
Essentially, yeah.
I don't hate that.
Because of you, I have fully gone back. I've listened to this album more than once.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal album. When I think of this album, I think of Tron. So naturally,
Yeah.
if I'm behind the wheel, it's a
Yeah.
direct correlation.
It's
I don't think it's limited to driving at all.
Yeah,
but
no,
I think you can enjoy it the most when you're driving.
No,
I like this for running.
Yeah.
Yep.
To me, like it's a great like
motion.
It's a great vibe album. Like to me, it's a great thing to put on in the background if you just want something that. To me, like I like doing things with like movies in the background because like I can just like ignore it and then like when something cool happens, I could be like, hey, that's kind of how I feel about this. You know, it kind of like just fits. But yeah, no, I think this is just like by far the best album in the category. So I needed to bring this up, and then I kind of wanted to bring in something from its roots.
Okay.
But this album,
Classic.
Yeah, this album
Classic.
though, I think maybe even more than any other album we all brought in, I think Soft Cell's Non-Stop Erotic Cabaret is probably a bit of an acquired taste. So I just brought Tainted Love, which is the most popular song off the album by a yard
significant margin.
Yes.
But like like the other ones are songs about like infidelity and pornography theaters. So it's like,
oh, nice.
but like that's the origin of it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes you feel you've got to run away.
Yeah,
it's true. Yeah. I mean, I get it. Obviously, Tainted Love, clearly recognized within 1 second of the song.
Yeah.
Anything else?
It's just I wanted to bring it in as just like an immediate, like this is like it's. We talk about hip hop, we talk about rock, we talk about gospel. There's probably not like a moment of synthesis in those genres the way synth pop does with like this specific song.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Okay.
Like, so that's what it is. This is really like the missing link, the evolutionary ancestor to it all. And then the next
I have to ask really quickly, and don't take this disrespectfully. I'm looking at the streaming numbers. Is Tainted Love almost like a one-hit wonder, considering how like unique their sound is?
What I mean, one, I would not. I think probably way more than the rock artists we were talking about. I think streaming numbers for this album is like a really foolhardy way to gauge its impact.
Yeah, you can't because of when it came out.
Yeah, and the other thing is that this album mostly lived in clubs, mostly lived like in gay bars at the time. Like it was not something. Like, I'm sure the record sales reflected differently. That being said, I don't necessarily bemoan the idea that Soft Cell is a one-hit wonder. I think most people wouldn't consider it because of the impact they had just generally. And I do think they have other hits that just aren't on this album. Let me look.
In the context of pop culture, I would have to say that they're a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they carved out like an extremely important niche in what would become a much larger genre going forward.
Yeah. So like that's really just why I wanted to bring this one in. So I knew this one would be like the shortest conversation, and I was happy with that. But I thought if I could just give you guys like a literal 2.5 minute history lesson on the genre, that would be worth it. Especially because like synth pop is a genre that I have grown to love very intensely over the last like 5 years. it's also, and I really wanted to bring it in and talk about it, but it's also not a very album forward genre.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Brandon,
I can see that definitely.
Are you familiar with Axel Ingrosso?
It sounds familiar, yeah, probably, but not to the same degree as these artists.
Okay, I'm gonna send you a song later.
Please do. And then the next one, Purvis probably recognizes one of these songs because I recommended it the episode before the Golden Nugget special.
But I remember the album cover.
Yeah. I wanted to bring in two songs from Mr. Kitty's Time, which is a more modern take on synth pop. After Dark, it's super funny because this song came out in 2014. I discovered this album like in 2016, 2017. But After Dark has gotten like a second life on TikTok.
Yeah,
so,
that's a TikTok song.
TikTok song.
It's crazy because like TikTok wasn't even in the United States when I first heard this song. Like,
it has 500 million streams. The next closest is under 15.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. These artists are not like, like once again, like these genres of music. It almost seems like streaming numbers like are almost completely irrelevant.
Yeah,
you know. But I think After Dark is just like like this is the genre. Like this is the genre, right? And I think Rats is like this is like the cool new direction it can go. Like it isn't just like these ultra sweet choruses with these really dynamic instrumentals. It's like there actually can be some rough and guffness to this.
I have a take here.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I love both of these. I put them both on my like songs playlist. I think on my like songs list. I think that Rats, the only thing about it that keeps this being a synth pop song is the style of the beat that it has. I think if it didn't have that beat, this would fall much closer into like full on like industrial, like Outrun type stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. Outrun and synth pop are like very incestuous, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, there's a wavery line there.
Yeah, that's a very wavy line. Industrial, however, I totally see where you're coming from. You know, I would
just the synth, like the straight like melody
that like
is,
that very aggressive like dun, 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 dun,
yeah.
Well, it sounds bad. It sounds like a car chase in an anime movie. It's amazing,
yes.
Right?
This made me want to recommend Eurobeat for like one of the genres on this list, but that's gonna be next time.
Yeah, but yeah, no, these are Purvis. What did you think about Rats? Did you listen to that?
I did listen to Rats. Luckily enough, I've already listened to After Dark. I think it was one of your recommended songs already.
It was, yeah, it was not very long ago.
It's what's the word I'm looking for?
Hard as fuck.
I think this was one of the more difficult ones for me to get attached to. Not saying that it's bad. I don't think anything's wrong with the music at all. It's too scratchy. If that makes sense.
It's
an acquired taste.
It's an acquired taste. Because like the thing is that like usually when music is very raw, it sounds very natural. It sounds like someone spitting into a microphone. It sounds like, you know, the strum of a guitar. It's very rare to hear something that sounds so raw and synthetic all at once. So
that's what I'm saying.
I like it. I think that's a fucking very incredible sound. But I get.
I mean, yeah. It's just like I say, it's not bad. It's just I don't think it's necessarily for me. When I say scratchy, it's interesting that you bring it up. It sounds like a speaker scratching. Like,
yeah, no, literally, yeah.
I think it serves its own purpose. What is the album cover about? I'm just confused.
I don't know.
Is there a concept? Because there wasn't really any words.
No.
To kind of go with the album cover, have both of you looked at the actual album listing page on Spotify?
I have it put up now.
I mean, I've listened to the album.
What are you referring to?
Look at the names of the tracks and the shape that they make. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I just noticed this.
That is actually pretty cool. It's just for anyone who isn't looking at it, this album, Time by Mr. Kitty, the song titles progressively go from shorter to longer. So they create this kind of like triangular shape on the page, which is pretty interesting. Illuminati.
I'm sure that was deliberate. Like it looks pretty cool.
Yeah. And like, look, this guy has a ton of music. I have not listened to all of it by any stretch. Because like, look, it's not my key genre. Like, it's not like hip hop where like I hear a breakbeat and it's like I'm in. Like,
yeah,
you know, like it's kind of like a lot. But this album,
this
to
is
me,
100% all satanic.
Yeah.
But it's
Good,
like fun satanic.
good,
It's not
like-
taking itself too
The
seriously.
albums now.
Good.
Purvis is clutching at his cross in the back under the desk.
Yeah,
Alright.
it's just funny because I know Brandon and I have discussed this before, and immediately, like, Brandon and I, when we chose our albums before, and I made him listen to gospel, and he made me listen to heavy metal, he was like, I'm not going to give you anything satanic. And I'm just like, thank you. And I feel like this would have been the one if you didn't follow that rule.
I mean, I
Well,
don't think the music's satanic at all. Like,
it's described as, like, if you look at his artist profile, it's described as self-destructive music.
yeah.
And you go to the Discovered On section, and there's a playlist here called Sigma Male TikTok Music in all caps.
Yeah.
And this
Right.
is, he's listed on this.
I love that.
Nice.
I love that.
I'm
Nice.
fucking dead.
I see appears on Exorcisms EP. All right. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Hey, he's doing the exercising. Come on, give him some credit.
Second song is 0% Angel.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
It's over, Purvis. You're going to hell.
Yeah. Sorry, Purvis.
You-
Welcome to
you
hell.
You listen to the demon music. The contract is sealed.
It's already been decided. It's game over from here going forward. That's hilarious.
Oh my god. All right.
Okay. Get into the fun.
Yeah, let's get to the fun one.
Let's go.
This third one, we all completely unbeknownst to each other went in a very similar direction.
Well, we had talked about it very briefly. I didn't think we expected it all to lean in this hard,
Yeah.
but we did talk about it because I had mentioned wanting to do like
We had mentioned wanting to
discuss
do like an
game music.
episode about this. Yeah.
about game music and,
Yeah.
and just music relating to popular media.
Yeah.
So yeah, my last category here is video game OST or original soundtrack. And as much as I love and am passionate about the music early on this list, this was by far the hardest category for me to narrow down.
Yeah.
By a lot. But yeah, so the first one I went with is the original soundtrack for Ghost Runner, a game that I would say is not the most popular, but came out a couple
good
years
game.
ago. It's on PlayStation, it's on PC. I played it on PC. I fell in love with it immediately.
It's
100%
hard.
of it. It's hard. It's a hard game. PC makes it easier. You can look around really freely compared to a controller. But Daniel Deluxe is my favorite newly discovered artist of last year. I would say that like this whole soundtrack and also the DLC are just like far and away like something super unique and just different from anything I was expecting. And it also fits nicely in that kind of like synth outrun area that I really like as far as instrumental music goes.
Yeah.
So my first track was Air, which is the title like opening theme. It's on the main menu. And it has kind of like a very thoughtful sound to it, but then it has these kind of very hard, intense moments within that I really like. And then Let Them Know is higher energy, starts out a little more calm, and then develops this really cool kind of like stepping synth sound that is just an earworm. So
Yeah.
I love this one, and I think it's just like new, unique, and kind of also leans into what we were talking about with your synth pop, and also with the breakaway into Daft Punk. So definitely some
Yeah. No.
some cuts there.
Yeah. No. This is perfect synthwave music.
Trying to figure out why my camera won't focus, but
Yeah.
you know,
I saw that as well.
Yeah. Me too.
wake up, please.
Oh, there we go.
But yeah, there it is.
It's like giving up on us.
But yeah, no, I was super familiar with this because like I played Ghost Runner, but like I sucked, so like I did not get past like the 4th or 5th stage, and
Gotcha.
but I listened to the music when it came out because like it's just very much the kind of music I'd like,
Yeah.
and this is a great example of like synthwave. I think it totally plays on its own, and it did such a good job building the world of Ghost Runner like while you're playing
Yeah.
the game.
And accenting, one thing that is amazing to me about this is no matter how many times I died playing the game, because this is a game where it's if you take one hit, you die, and you have to
Yeah.
restart from a checkpoint. No matter how many
Right.
times I died playing this, when this music was playing, I felt energized. Like I didn't
Yeah.
get tired of failing. I like And that's something that good game music will do.
Yeah.
It will keep you in a mood in an area regardless of how long you have to spend there.
Yeah.
So it made me want to keep going, which I think is a good quality.
take.
Yeah, that's the perfect take. And like, look, don't get me wrong, like that's impressive when you have, Ghost Runner and you can throw the whole kit and caboodle at it. But think about like when you were making Sonic the Hedgehog, you had 5 different bloops to use. And it was like you had to make
Green Hill Zone Go.
Yeah. You had and you had to make music just as compelling, just as catchy. Like video game music is like a unique challenge. It's something that like I feel like people in our generation listen to a lot on its own, and I just don't. But like,
I do definitely.
Yeah, no, I respect it because it's just like really, really well made music.
Yeah,
I agree.
Purvis, what do you think?
I haven't played the game. I'll say that, but I enjoyed the music. I will say everything that we just mentioned is beneficial towards the album, if you want to call it a quote unquote album.
Yeah.
But one thing that does take away from it, you don't get the game aspect. I feel like with original soundtracks, unlike movie scores, I feel like it is easier to separate a movie score from the actual movie.
That's interesting.
Where it's a lot more difficult to separate a game score from the actual game, because I feel like as involved as you can get with the movie, you can fully enjoy it, you can connect to it to the deepest meaning. It's different when you're playing a game. It's just naturally different because you have to control your player in the movement. It's like you literally are in the game.
Yeah.
So I unfortunately, because I didn't play the game, I didn't get to enjoy it to that degree. But I think in terms of the original soundtrack, it is catchy. It is involving.
Yeah.
It brings you in. But unfortunately, I didn't play the game. So I feel like I'm...
Would you say that?
I didn't really get to...
Would you say that having listened to the soundtrack, you are interested in finding out more about what the game is like?
Yeah, for sure. I believe it or not,
accomplished.
even though it is an older game, I don't know the game. And that is rare for
Is
me.
it older?
You guys know.
2020.
2020?
Ghost Runner
I thought you guys
is
said
pretty
this
new.
was an older game.
No, I said this was a newer game.
Yeah.
Came out October 27th of 2020.
Give me a second.
And it's on PlayStation and PC.
Yeah.
You should play it on PC.
Yeah, it's very good on PC.
I'm
you
serious.
two in your push for PC.
No,
although I
serious.
respect
Dude,
it and
it's
I
for the
understand it,
controls.
I know.
Dude, any first person game you should be playing on PC.
Yeah. The controls just are not...
Yeah, it's like so much harder on the console. You have no idea.
I remember I tried to play Doom 2016 on console and I hated it. And then I played it on PC and I was like, wow, this game is amazing.
That is the game. My PC was originally for video editing, and then I got Doom 2016, and then it became
So Doom 2016 was one of the honorable mentions for this category for me. I was really considering putting it on there, and then we would have had our metal entry.
Yeah, because that's metal to the degree, and like making metal music that doesn't get old is extremely hard.
So I gotta say, I have like my own little subgenre name that I give to music like that, because it's not quite like it's score music, but it's also metal. I call it cinemetal because it's like there are scoring elements of it that are not just like strictly like the metal sound kit, like there's like some other like sound effects and stuff.
Orchestral and stuff.
Yeah. Purvis, you seem perplexed. Are you okay? What's going on?
I'm looking into Ghost Runner right now. I'm confused because I've seen the cover of the game.
Yeah.
I am shocked. I have not. I watch a lot of games, like a lot of gameplay. I don't know why any of my streamers didn't play this game.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I will stream this game if you want to watch it sometime.
I
mean, at this point, I feel like I should just play it. The ratings are insanely high.
You should read my Steam review.
Yeah.
I reviewed it on Steam.
Oh, add me on Steam.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, I'm sold in. You got me.
Let's go down to Halo 3 because we're at the big 3 hours.
Way too long.
I don't
Jesus Christ.
I don't give a shit. I will go another hour. Fuck you.
Yeah.
This is a podcast. That's the whole point. Like,
this is a year special. To be fair, this is a year special.
Yeah,
year special and the 50th episode.
This is more than justified.
Yeah. My personal favorite game of all time. The God King of first-person shooters, in my opinion. Halo 3. Arguably, like, the most refined point for, like, the original shooter series that brought shooters to, like, our generation. goddamn, does this game have some good music?
Yeah, it does.
Martin O'Donnell, Michael Salvadori, absolute masterclass. They did all 3 of the original Halo games, and Bungie founders said, Martin will come in and has this incredible power, which I both love and resent, and that is that he can take anything we're working on and make it at least twice as good when he adds his music to it. And no one else in the studio has the power to make anything twice as good on their own. So I picked out 2 tracks that I think are the most impactful and important across the entire discography, which is huge. It's music for menus, it's music for multiplayer, it's music for the single player campaign. I picked out Never Forget, which is the kind of menu track that sets the vibe for the start of the game, which is, the aliens that you've been fighting and losing to progressively throughout the first 2 games have finally found Earth, your home planet, and are starting to destroy it. And you got to figure your shit out. So that's kind of like the opening experience, I guess, through just the menus. You're getting a tone set, and this really sets the tone. We got heavy piano, we've got intense strings that kind of accompany that, and it builds and builds and then fades and leaves you with this sense of like emptiness. Like there's something to do, and you got to do it, but at the same time, it's there's like a almost like a foregone conclusion to what you're doing. Like there's a finality to it.
Yeah.
And then one final effort, exact opposite. This is like the rallying call of the entire game. Like everything that you've worked on to this point has got to like come together in this moment to make it happen and save humanity, save the galaxy, everything else. And both tracks are just intense. I listened to both of them back to back to put this together, deciding which ones I wanted. Immediate goosebumps, just like having the volume up and like thinking back to the moments across like playing this game that were impactful to me as a kid, even now, like when I go back to it. Powerful stuff. I love this soundtrack, and I think anybody if you haven't played Halo 3 and you're listening to this podcast, stop listening, go play Halo 3, and then listen to this also, because it is, work of art, in my opinion.
No, I totally agree. Halo 3 is definitely the peak of the Halo franchise for me.
Yeah. This and Reach were like just on the level.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know. I didn't have the Halo face like every other Xbox user.
I'm not even really an Xbox user, and I had a Halo face. Like,
yeah, but it's like literally the staple of Xbox.
Yeah,
it's
it
like
is.
the first main game that Microsoft owns or whatever. I didn't realize how deep Halo went when you told me the story yesterday.
I was explaining Halo to Purvis, like the lore. I was like,
"Oh my god, never!"
It took like
you can go
a
so
very
much
long
deeper.
time,
dude. I watched like hour-and-a-half long video essays about Halo lore that's not in the games. It goes deep. It's like Star Wars lore, the way they like really build it out as a world, which is something that I think I like. I love it. I love a deep kind of fantasy experience like that.
I really do appreciate it. When I was thinking about this type of like original soundtrack for a game, I was thinking about like Interstellar.
Yeah,
like connections to that.
It definitely does. It has that grand.
That was the main
scope.
thing. Yeah, and that movie alone is phenomenal.
I almost brought.
I'm not gonna get into that.
Mine. Yeah, that was almost.
That would have been a good option.
I just feel like Hans Zimmer is like overdone.
Yeah,
no, I get it.
I feel like Halo, Marty O'D and Michael Salvadori did a really good job of synthesizing old and new, because it's easy to get too carried away with something that's sci-fi and make it too futuristic and kind of emotionless in a way where it becomes very robotic, very mechanical in the sound. But this uses strings and a choir. It's a monk choir.
It was quite literally the same strategy as Star Wars.
Yeah, you have an operatic almost kind of feel. It gives it like a sacred or like ancient feel to something that is very new. And that's kind of what the game is about, because you're discovering ancient artifacts from, old alien races and things. And it kind of gives it this sense of antiquity that you don't get in a lot of sci-fi. So I think it really bridged that gap well, much in the way of the Star Wars series originally.
Yeah.
Look at that. So this last one, this is the first Red Dead, correct?
This is the first Red Dead.
Technically the second.
Technically the second, but the first one.
That's what I was curious.
It's not canon.
It's not part of the story, but there was a game called
technically
Red Dead
the
Revolver.
second. Yes,
Red Dead Revolver is
yes.
the original.
I played a lot of Red Dead Revolver, so it's like
I know a lot about Red Dead Revolver. Yeah.
So this
totally
is
get that.
Yeah,
this is Red Dead Redemption 1, John Marston's story.
one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, one of my favorite games and one of my favorite soundtracks.
Yeah,
Whole series.
Yeah. So, we were talking about Cormac McCarthy earlier. I actually used the soundtrack for this in a literary capacity at one point when I had to write a book analysis on that for like my senior year graduation paper for English class.
yeah,
And All the Pretty Horses was the book that we read and then reviewed, and we had to put together music that we thought would accompany, an adaptation of this as like part of the multimedia prompt. And I picked tracks from Red Dead to like show the story of John Grady Cole, the main character of that, making his way through Mexico as a ranch hand. And so this was like perfectly in line with that. Everything about this soundtrack fits directly with the way the game makes you feel. It cultivates like a direct experience that it wants you to have, but gives you freedom to feel your own feelings within that. So a lot of the soundscape of the soundtrack is sparse. There's a lot of open, kind of more minimal sound. Horseplay is one of the more intense tracks, one of the ones that I picked, and it's when you are wrangling horses. And for that, it does have some higher energy to it, but a lot of it is open and makes you feel as though you're in like a wasteland or a desert. And then Compass, all time, one of my favorite tracks of like anything singer-songwriter, video game or not. Just like this beautiful kind of timid almost performance of this really beautiful song about, returning to one's loved ones. And honestly, Red Dead is one of those rare examples in terms of soundtracks where it is really stacked at the back end, because you've got just so much that is just intense back there. You've got Dead Man's Gun, Bury Me Not on the Lone Prairie, like all these tracks that have vocals to them that you don't get throughout the rest of the game, that all stack up at the very end in the conclusion. And they're all good. Like I love Dead Man's Gun. That was almost on the list, but I picked Compass over that. But yeah, just strong, solid, atmospheric, and it holds up. It doesn't age because it's already of such a different time period that it feels fresh whenever you go back to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It immediately evocates the westerns that it's evocating.
Yeah, it's got that feel.
I was literally about to say, just in general, because I looked at your list and I saw that it was Red Dead. I don't think there's a debate. Red Dead is the best cowboy video game series in existence.
Yeah, there's nothing else that comes close.
Gun was cool, but it doesn't come close.
It's not even in the same circle. I feel like Red Dead has held himself so much higher within the gaming community. Rockstar is phenomenal with the majority of the games, I want to say. And this is what I wish country music was.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Honestly,
I like
this. This is what I wish country music was. Because this is literally what it feels like to be a cowboy in a desert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what I'm thinking.
And cowboys are badass. Everyone knows that
cowboys are... Name one bad cowboy movie. Don't do that. There's actually probably a lot. But still.
the new Lone Ranger movie with Johnny Depp as a Native American. You're welcome.
Yeah. But for every one of those,
look, I took it back as soon as I said it. But there's a lot of like really classic ones.
Yeah,
so,
of course, yeah. It's a genre which I think we're gonna touch on again with Brandon's list, because he picked one of my favorite soundtracks of all time on that too.
Yeah, so. But what's interesting is that, and spoiler alert, it's the Django Unchained soundtrack.
Let's go.
They don't sound anything alike, and yet they both immediately evocate the Old West. And
I gotta say,
the
there are two songs that I do think sound alike that are the Morricone songs, because I think Red Dead drew a lot of influence from that spaghetti western.
It's impossible not to.
Yeah.
Like if you make Chipmunk Soul, you're gonna sound like Kanye West. if you make a Western song, you're gonna sound like Ennio Morricone. It's impossible not to.
Yeah. I can't even pronounce it. It's what is it? Una Giorni dell'Ira or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
That song where it's got that crazy riffing guitar.
Yeah.
Super intense and just like over the top and beautiful.
Purvis, do we want to go on to your section? Because you also did video games.
Yes.
But you did it in a different direction.
Yes. The route that I took, I did video games just because it's probably one of the more involved activities in my life. I want to say it's not even a hobby at this point. Like I feel like between all three of us, just in general, if it's not hip hop, it's video games.
Yeah.
If it's not the second close thing, and I feel like
right now in my life, it switches because like movies are like my big thing.
That is true. But just like in general, like these are the main sources of media that we dive into. So I wanted to go actual soundtracks created on video games. Yeah. Because obviously you have original soundtracks that are meant for that game, but I think there's a lot of phenomenal created soundtracks. And I think it's a talent to take selective music and have it apply to another form of media, which is why I have 30 playlists on my Spotify. It's essentially a game creator making a playlist for their game. I wanted to give a couple of different options. So the first one I wanted to go over is actually the playlist to NBA Street Volume 2.
So many hours.
This takes me back, dude.
Dude, oh my God. I remember my PS2.
Bro. I saw this game. I saw this song on the list, your first one here, and I had the moment of the food critic from Ratatouille where it like goes into his fucking eye, like, it just, like and goes back to my childhood,
bro.
Dude,
everything about the game within itself is phenomenal. One of the best sports games. I know that might be a take, but one of the best sports games ever created.
I don't think that's a take. I think that's a pretty popular opinion.
Like the first song I did is "How We Do." Made by The Game featuring 50 Cent. It is the definition of blacktop basketball. Just a whole bunch of niggas just jumping around hooping. Like it's perfect within itself. And then the second song, Freaky Leak, it's just a staple to the black community. It's just such a good song. I think the entire playlist that they created for that game, it surprisingly actually isn't that long, but every song, it's perfectly selected.
It's like,
in my opinion,
it's like Mark Hamill in the new Star Wars, the sacred texts.
Like
you just can't mess with it. It's just perfect.
My favorite thing is when I text you, I'm like, dude, one of your songs almost brought me to tears. You were like, which one? And I went, Freak a Leak. Like,
I just started dying.
Not never would have made it. Not never would have made it. Freak a Leak.
It's like, I can't believe you've done this. But that's the first one. Like I said, one of my favorite sports games. And sports games nowadays are just play to win. So it's nice.
Yeah, dude, I miss back in the day.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I sound old just saying that, but
I was about to say the lyrics that you mentioned at the end of the year, but the sake of old heads sucking about back in my day. But anyway, Jasper.
I want to ask before we move to the next one, I want to try and guess what these two songs are from because I have a pretty good idea, but I don't know exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Are these from New Vegas?
Close.
Are they from
very close? Fallout 4. Personally, I fell in love with Fallout 4. I know me mentioning 4. You never played, but you played other Fallout.
I played 3 of New Vegas.
Okay, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Obviously, they all rank differently, but in terms of the series, I think Fallout is a very special game in terms of putting you in a time period or an atmosphere. The concept of dealing with like an atomic bomb warfare and post-atomic like lifestyles the game within itself is an amazing concept. The inventory system is phenomenal, but I won't go into the game aspects. But the music within itself, I remember the first Fallout game was Fallout 4, so I kind of did them out of order. I borrowed it from one of my friends. Shout out Patrick. I know me even mentioning Fallout, he's gonna lose his mind when he hears this. But when I left the vault, I just went walking. I didn't follow any missions. I didn't go get the dog. I literally just went walking in a wasteland. And having this radio play, it puts you in that time period of the 1950s, 1960s. Every single song slaps.
Yeah.
Every single song is amazing.
Those
I don't
songs
even
go
listen
hard.
to this type of music.
Yeah,
It is phenomenal.
You put it in the right context, and I'll listen to this shit all day. Like,
bro,
facts.
Literally, when you were mentioning like this is the type of music that have you play games all day, I don't even like I said, my first one was Fallout 4, so I didn't even have an experience with the Fallout series. I found myself hours, not even doing missions, just walking around, like literally just exploring the vast like environment of the game. And you have songs like Keep a Knocking, you have songs like Personality, and so many other great songs by like top tier.
I can't front you. That's
and then my last one that I want to go over,
one of the greatest video game soundtracks of all time, maybe.
One of the greatest soundtracks. There's so many levels that I want to break down. If you don't know, we are talking about GTA 5. We've already praised Rockstar when we was talking about Red Dead and that series. GTA as a series is iconic, one of the most famous video games there is. GTA 5 is the most successful one, I would say, out of the series. GTA 5 has gone through 3 generations of gaming. If you don't understand games, that is unheard of. It's never been done before, I'm pretty sure, and I can claim that.
On PS2, we got 3 Grand Theft Autos, and now we have a Grand Theft Auto 5 on 3 PlayStations. Like,
that's what I'm saying. It is absurd, the gravity of this game. You could play GTA for 1,000 hours, and you could still turn the game back on and this is the game you hop in the car and just drive around and listen to the radio.
No, it is.
And what I want to talk about, the 2 songs I decided to include was actually from the original soundtrack. A lot of people don't know they had a pretty big budget for their soundtrack. They have major names like BJ the Chicago Kid, Freddie Gibbs. They have A$AP Rocky. They have Tyler the Creator.
Real quick,
the list goes on.
Yeah, for people who don't know, when he says a pretty big budget, Grand Theft Auto 5's budget for development was the largest of any video game in history at that point. $300 million, which is the same amount of money that was used to make Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, which at the time was the highest budget movie of all time. Yeah. So we're talking about like the most well-funded and probably best executed open world game of all time up until that point.
That is the perfect way to put it.
Fucking shows, because you look at the people who they got for this soundtrack, not even just the rights to songs. Kenny Loggins is the MC, or the spinning DJ for Los Santos Rock Radio, a fictional radio station in this game. They got Kenny fucking Loggins to come in and be the host.
Like, it is a real radio station.
They still update the music.
I will go as far. That's literally okay. So that's what I was about to go into. The 2 songs I included were original soundtracks, but it's so much larger than that.
It's huge.
It is better than the actual radio. Yeah, like I will gladly say that the radio in GTA 5 is better than the radio you have in your car.
You know what's crazy is the agency I work for has placed ads on the radio in GTA. Like,
that's how massive it is. Just the concept alone of having a radio in a game like this, and you sign off artists to make original music, you update 5, 6, 7 years later.
Yeah.
The music.
This is
they have like 20 radio stations.
Dude, this game's gonna be 10 years old this year.
It's not going to be a hot take at all, but like GTA 5 has become what Second Life always wanted to be.
Oh yeah, that's
In
not
like
a
no
hot take.
small way. People use it for everything.
Yeah.
Like
You
people
can
film
mod the hell out of
you
GTA
can mod
5.
it. People film little like cinematics and make their own like short films and even feature length films in GTA using character creation. People like role play like flight controllers and shit. Like it's unbelievable.
I was
the
literally about
things
to
that are
say,
done with
literally,
this
like
game.
people have they've developed the game so you have a role. You can be like a cop in the game
Yeah.
and like interact with other people in the game as
Yeah.
though
Yeah.
it's a regular. It's like Minecraft, which
Yeah.
is
That was
insane
the other one I
to
was going to be
compare
like.
it to.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
a
honorable
phenomenal
mention.
game. It's so massive and like such a living, breathing world.
Yeah,
Literally,
the
to
world
this day.
feels lived in, which is something that Rockstar has always done a good job of.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that you mentioned that this is 10 years old, me being 26, the fact that I first got this in high school
Yeah,
and I can turn this on right now and still play it and
Yeah.
have it be a AAA title game competitive with
The newest
Hogwarts
shit.
that just came out.
Yeah.
This is mind blowing.
Yeah.
You need to understand the gravity of this.
Oh, this game is better than most games that still come out. Like,
Literally.
Purvis, I just realized there is one game that has come out on more platforms than GTA 5. Can you guess what it
Interesting.
is it
Hold
Spider-Man
on.
2?
Does
No.
it have to do with
God.
Nintendo?
It's
No.
on Nintendo, yes, but it is not a Nintendo game.
Whoa. Okay, it's on Nintendo.
It's on the Switch. It's not a Nintendo game.
Is it Just Dance?
No. Because that's lots of generations. I'm talking one singular game that has been re-released across like 4 or 5 platforms at this point.
Man, I always thought that was Spider-Man 2. Because that was on like PS2,
Is it-
PlayStation.
Is it a Call of Duty game?
No. Call of Duty is seasonal. Those don't count. Those have no staying power.
Yeah.
Damn.
Give up?
I'm pissed. Yes, I give up.
Skyrim.
For timing's sake.
Oh, that makes the most sense. Yeah.
That makes
Xbox
perfect
360,
sense.
PS3, Xbox One, PS4, PC, Nintendo Switch, and I think they
PS5.
even made remastered versions for PS5 and
Yeah.
Xbox Series.
1,000 modded versions on PC.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got at least 8.
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls. Yeah, I'll give you that. That's fair. That is fair.
All right. Are we moving?
But yeah, that's enough video games, Brandon.
All right. Let's go to Tinseltown for the last one. Jesus Christ, I got to pee so bad. All
Gotta
right.
cut
So,
this soon.
so I'm a movie guy. So when we wanted to bring in stuff we don't listen to, I had to bring in film scores. Full disclosure, I'm not someone who like listens to a ton of film scores outside of the movie, but I certainly have opinions on film scores as they pertain to movies. And I spend so much time watching movies that, like, if you counted film scores as a genre, it is probably top 5 of like things I've listened to in my whole life. And we've already talked about this group, but when it comes to just like iconic soundtracks that I do actually listen to, I think this is this group's best project. Like, full stop. Tron Legacy.
You think Tron Legacy is better
I
than
just love
Discovery?
I would
I
not
just-
get involved in this.
That's
I
a
just-
heavy statement.
I
That's
just-
I
a
would not be
heavy
getting
statement.
involved.
I
in
just
this.
love like the amount of like world building that like completely stands on its own within the context of the album that
Yeah.
also enhances the movie. I think you and me might disagree about the movie a little bit because while I agree it doesn't have a whole lot of cultural relevance, especially as a franchise, one, I think the movie that's currently number 1 in the box office proves that just because people don't talk about something.
Oh no,
Doesn't
I
mean-
100% agree. I love Tron Legacy.
Yeah.
It's just that
I-
I think Disney didn't allow it to be what it could have been.
I agree with that part, 100%.
Yeah.
I think the movie absolutely works. I think it is
Yeah.
one of the best modern Disney movies.
I think it's aged well too.
Yeah, I
like,
think it's aged
graphics
very
wise.
well, graphics-wise. Even though it has like the really shitty early de-aging, within the
Yeah.
context of Tron, it fits really well.
Yeah, and all of that is swept away by the fact that Jeff Bridges fought Jeff Bridges on a bridge. Like,
Yeah,
what
amazing.
more do you want?
Bridgeception. One of my favorite like pieces of trivia though is that Daft Punk were actually the most intense Tron fans involved in the production.
Yep.
And they would actually have meetings with the director, Joseph Kosinski, and like test him to make sure he was doing shit right. But like, you know, when you have the concept of like this is a world inside the computer, yeah, I think Kavinsky would have been a cool choice. But like, there is no one
who else
fits
is gonna
besides Daft Punk. Yeah, like I
who
think
else?
once again, I think there's one other name that could do it, and I think they are clearly the second fiddle. Like, and I picked just like this stream Derez Fall and Solar Sailor, just because I think there are a wide breadth of the amount of like tones and emotions we got from this score, and also just like they hit hard. So like, I think one because like when I'm listening to Daft Punk, I'm usually looking for something that's a little bit closer to ambient than dance music. But yeah, this is my favorite of their projects, and like I probably watched that Tron movie more than most people, but I listen to this album way more often.
I've seen that movie many times, and I come back to this too a lot. Yeah,
I watch it every other year probably. Like
Disney, do it right. Make a new Tron movie and make it good, please. Bring Daft Punk back.
Is this on Disney Plus?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, for when it came out,
and you have to do a certain thing, like.
Okay, to be fair, I'm not like a Disney person, but I will watch it.
No, this is
not a Disney thing, really. Like they own the rights, but it is not a Disney film.
It does not feel like a Disney film. It's about I guess like the only way it feels like a Disney film is that it is very family appropriate.
Yeah,
that's
that's fine.
It's the kind of movie you could take a child to and not have them be scared or overwhelmed. But it's definitely
not be concerned.
Yeah, but it's definitely not It's definitely not for children. Like,
that's fine.
So yeah, no, this is what I brought it.
For when it came out, I don't even remember when this came out. 2009?
I think so.
2010, somewhere like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
It has aged incredibly gracefully. Purvis, like if you watch it, the CG, the effects that are used in it, a lot of them look like they could be contemporary because they're stylized in such a way that doesn't make them feel as though they rely on like photorealism.
Yeah.
So it does this really good job of not being photoreal, which makes it so that, you know, it's more plausible. And I just looked it up. It came out 2010. So it's been 13 years and it's still hits.
It is still all like the boxes. One of the best visual set pieces, you know.
You said it was like 2010?
Yeah.
2010.
I think I know why. I feel like And I don't want to like put them against each other in whatsoever, but I feel like mine was Speed Racer. I attached myself to Speed Racer, which was 2008.
Speed Racer.
I never saw it.
Speed Racer's a good movie. Speed Racer's a much weirder movie.
That's probably why I attached myself to it.
This is a much more, I would say, traditional movie. And I also I think Speed Racer is good. I think Speed Racer got a lot of hate it doesn't deserve. But this is the better movie in my opinion, like pretty clearly. And also I thought it was interesting that like this was the soundtrack was like part of the marketing campaign for this. But like when you have Daft Punk, of course it's going.
You can do that.
Yeah, of course it's going.
You can do that.
Yeah.
So this was 2010. It generated a lot of hype because before this, the last Daft Punk project to come out was Alive 2007, which was a live, a live performance album 3 years prior, and then before that, Human After All was 2000, or not even Human After All. Human After All remixes were 06. Human After All was 2005. So it had been 5 years since an original Daft Punk album.
Yeah.
Like Ocean Gaps.
Yeah, and like this was a great filler for it, I would say.
Yeah, it's like, in terms of gaps, you got Frank, Daft Punk, Tool.
Yeah. And then you have like George R.R. Martin. Like,
is it ever?
I have had an entire Frank Ocean career in the time I've been waiting for that one book. Like,
it's never gonna happen. He's gonna die first.
Don't say that to me. Like,
I'm a realist.
Don't say that to me. That's my favorite book series of all time. I hope that doesn't happen.
True. Fingers crossed.
All right, I want to move on. Speaking of favorites of all time, My favorite movie
Man,
of all time is probably The Social Network. Which
I finally saw it recently.
you did?
It's really good.
It's
it's a
extremely
good
good.
movie.
It's
I
extremely
like it.
good. And the score, I think, is très magnifique. Like, first off, I wanted to bring another score that was done by an artist, right? That was done
Yeah.
by people who make music meant to be consumed as music. Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor
Yeah.
are the brainchild behind Nine Inch Nails. They basically are like a fundamental force in industrial music.
Yep.
And they transitioned into doing film scores. They did this one. And the thing I love about this is like The Social Network is a movie mostly composed of characters talking in boardrooms. And if you listen to the soundtrack, not just these two songs, like the entire soundtrack, it just does not sound like the kind of music that would accompany that kind of story.
And yet
it
Here we
works
are.
perfectly. And I think it's the rare movie that fires on literally every single cylinder. And also, like, I do think
It's a unique story within itself, in my opinion.
and the other thing I think is interesting is like they don't go for like the actual historical record of what happened at Facebook. They go for like a mythologizing of it. But especially post Cambridge Analytica, especially post 2020, it's kind of crazy how prophetic the people behind making that movie were about like how the assholes in dorm rooms were going to control speech on the internet. Like,
big facts. They were spot on.
yeah. So I think first off, like the fact that once again it's a movie mostly composed of characters talking in boardrooms, the fact that it is a visual and auditory feast while doing that is just like,
you know who directed it, right?
David Fincher.
Yep.
Yeah,
He's got that. That's a very signature style.
David Fincher is one of my favorite directors of all time. I've read books about him.
Yeah.
I think this is easily his best movie.
That's a hot take.
I don't think it's a hot take. Like,
what's the competitor?
That's Fight Club and Seven and
those
the girl
are
with
big
the dragon tattoo and
I
Zodiac.
think, well, the thing is that Fight Club is just so oftenly misconstrued and has kind of taken on a place in the culture that is like, it's basically like, do you know the phenomenon that happened with like the song Swimming Pools? Where it's like, this is a song about
of course.
Of the horrors of alcoholism, and then people use it to pour
Everyone's
shots at the
fucking
bar.
drinking.
It's a fucking banger.
Yeah. Fight Club is that. Fight Club is about the horrors of toxic masculinity, and people use it as like,
look, that's Kendrick's whole career. That's not fair.
But regardless of what people interpret it as, I mean, to say that the direction of Fight Club isn't, I think, one of his top, and also like revolutionary is, I don't know.
I do think
maybe not.
I do think it's revolutionary, right? I don't think Fight Club's a bad movie. I don't know if it's revolutionary. That might be a bit much. But like I love Fight Club, but my thing is that like David Fincher,
direction as far as like cinematography though, and a lot of the elements of filmmaking, like the technical elements of that film, were
like
pretty
the motion,
groundbreaking.
Like the motion capture, the motion control and stuff like that. Yes, I agree. I just think like in terms of craft as a director, I think David Fincher had to calm the fuck down before he could make his best work. You know, it's one thing to take like this incredibly heady psychological thriller or Seven, this super high concept horror movie, and turn that into like a visual feast. I feel like that's like making a feast out of like ham and prime rib. But like to make something so striking and innovative out of this subject matter, you know, I think it's a higher bar. And I think, you know, I also just think like the script for this is just like far and away kind of better than the Fight Club scripts. And, you know, I do kind of always approach movies as like a writer kind of first.
No, I get that.
Yeah. So this, I have very strong opinions about David Fincher's filmography.
Okay. I was going to say, give me 2 seconds. I need to grab my food.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I need to rewatch this actually. Now that I'm looking at it, also 2010. I haven't seen it since probably 2014.
Dude, it's so good. It's so good. I mean, David Fincher's never made a bad movie. Also, Zodiac. Zodiac's probably my second favorite.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Seven and Fight Club both are just like powerhouses.
I mean, I agree. Like, I think those movies are incredible, but Fight Club for me, just like I just
And
think
then
I just think it's overrated, and that just kind of gives me a bad taste in my mouth. As
what
great
about
as it is,
what about Girl with the Dragon Tattoo?
I think it's good. I think it's very good, even especially because like I don't think those books are particularly great. Uh, and I don't even think I'm gonna cut this because we just had like a nice little conversation.
I was literally about to say I didn't even eat like lunch or dinner, so
No,
I
I
had to
feel
grab
you.
my food.
It's past midnight.
It is past midnight.
I will get to my. Do you want to just start the final one because I feel like this is something we can all have a fun time with.
I'm gonna say real quick. In the Hall of the Mountain King, regardless of what version, banger. This version, extra banger.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, no, it's spooky, and
it gets in my head every time. Bum 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 bum. Every time.
And it's used in the movie with the
row racing,
with the rowing scene.
It conjures the scene immediately. Like I could picture it in my head the second I heard it, and I haven't seen the movie in like 8 years.
Dude, yeah, I gotta rewatch the movie too. I really want to. But shall we talk about Django Unchained? When I talked about film scores, I was like, gotta bring this one in because when it comes like
banger,
because Quentin Tarantino is just like the king, and besides maybe Martin Scorsese, he is the king of the soundtrack. Not the score, because like the previous two were scores. This is a soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's score to it, like the Morricone stuff is like score, but
it's a hybrid.
It's certainly a hybrid, exactly. And I just think like the off the wall, like Quentin Tarantino choosing some modern music for the first time, like it does a whole lot to evocate the Old West, right? So I brought in Django, which was the title track, which just goes so hard. And once again, like I don't know if you guys know this, but the Jasper probably does. But the Django movies are a reference to a series of westerns made in Italy in the 1960s. Do you guys the scene where Django's at the bar during the fights, and he's like talking to the old guy, and he's like, "Oh, do you know how to spell your name?" And it has like the D is silent line.
The D is silent. Yeah.
Yeah, that the guy he's spelling his name to is the original Django.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's why when he says like the D is silent, he says I know. Like
I know.
And then this song was for his movies.
The Spaniard.
Yeah,
was the character. Yeah.
So I just think like it immediately sets up like this weird like spaghetti western version of the West, which is this doesn't even take place in the West. This takes place in the Deep South.
It takes place in both because the whole winter montage, they go out west, they go to Colorado.
Do they? I have no idea. I
yeah,
just know that
it's like it starts in the South. It starts in Texas.
Yeah.
It starts in Texas because that's where Django gets found. They're in the South a bit. They go out west and they bounty hunt over the course of the winter, and then they come back and they go to Mississippi. And in Mississippi is where the rest of the movie takes place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
it's both. I would say it's like comfortably straddles.
Yeah. And then I brought in the Braying Mule, which was part of the score, which I feel like is just
shits.
Immediately puts you there. And then, of course, this is probably a top 5 all-time song for me, but I Got a Name by Jim Croce is like a very like typical folk song from like the 1970s, the kind you would hear on easy listening radio. But man, when you hear this and in the movie it plays with like Django doing his cowboy training, it just transcends. It's so good.
I'm about to say the impact of the lyrics alone and the message behind everything, how it plays into the movie.
The lyrics are at a level that like no one will ever get to, in my opinion.
Genius selection.
Jim Croce is a legend. Huge fan of his, just in general. And then this is the closest I decided to get to hip hop.
What a combination.
What a combination.
Never in the world would I wake up and think James Brown and Tupac is in a song.
It works, though.
For a cowboy shootout scene. Like, and it hits
I'll take
so hard. It hits so hard. Like,
an absolutely genius combination.
The second I hear like that, like the guitar, like the Western guitar, and then cut to the Tupac. Yeah, it's like, where are my guns? It's like, press R3, activate Deadeye. Like,
man.
But yeah, no, it's just like, you know, you can do interesting things with a soundtrack. You can bring in Jim Croce. You could bring in Django. A song I didn't select but wanted to was 100 Black Coffins by Rick Ross. You know, just a straight up Rick Ross song, like on this Django Unchained soundtrack, right? And look, this movie is easily a classic. I think the soundtrack's a classic. I think this is easily in Tarantino's top 3. You know, I don't know what else to say.
This is a great selection, honestly. It hits in everything you're looking for. Great movie, great director, great soundtrack.
Yeah.
Great artists in the soundtrack. Like,
but do you know what the soundtrack doesn't have? A song by Jamie Foxx, ironically.
Yeah.
I'm looking on Spotify. He at least mentioned on the songs.
That's a excerpt from the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I Like the Way You Die Boy credit is from that. This is a soundtrack album that I'm like also deeply familiar with, probably to the same level as Tron Legacy. And I found myself when these came on the other day when I was listening, I just sang along with everything. I was just like, "This is it!" Like, I missed this shit, so I went and added it back to my favorites.
In a while, but
I'm gonna rewatch Django tomorrow. Like,
yeah.
Man. I'm gonna murder my slave owners.
Can I tell you guys a funny story about the first time I saw this movie real quick?
Go ahead.
What's up?
So I saw this movie the day it came out, Christmas Day, 2012.
Me too.
Being your friendly neighborhood Jewish man, that's what you did on Christmas. You didn't do anything with family. You went to the movies.
Yeah.
And I was in Belleville, Illinois, visiting my dad's family with my parents and my brother. And my dad and I went to go see this because we were super hyped, liked Tarantino. And we went. And we went to, I think, the O'Fallon, which is another town in Illinois, theater. And we went in for a late show. It was like the 9:30 or 10 o'clock show because everything else had been sold out. We were the only white people there. And it was amazing. Yeah. The most excited, animated fucking audience. Cheers for everything. Yeah. Gasps, intense. It was just like a really fun, like super cool experience. I was just like, damn, like they know how to turn out on Christmas fucking Eve or on Christmas Day to like watch this movie. This is fire.
Yeah,
for sure.
One of my favorite theater experiences.
I saw it at like 10 p.m. on Christmas Day. Because, like, I'm Latino, so, like, we do all of the Christmas stuff on Christmas Eve.
The day before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, like, we did Christmas morning, but, like, we were
done. The rest of the day is, like,
we were done with family stuff by, like, 2. You know? So, like, me and my friends, we went to the movie theater in Melrose Park, right across the street from the Blue Store. And that was an interactive experience. Yeah. But, no, it's just one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Guys,
this is in my top 5.
Yeah, 100%. Sure. Guys, this was the Blitz. Jesus Christ.
Blitz.
This was a Blitz.
We've made it. Low key, when we said 9 albums each, I was like, Jesus Christ, this is going to be a mission.
I have a question. Do we want to put, like, song recs?
No recommendations.
Yeah, no. Let's put song recs on ice, seeing as we just recommended 27 albums. Like
you'll be fine. Find a song.
Find a song. Like,
it's like, my recommendation for this week is to click the links to the Spotify playlist in the description of this podcast.
So, like, it's been, Jesus Christ, we're at 3 hours and 45 minutes.
I'm done.
This was longer than the Avengers. But
probably better
honestly,
too at this rate.
It's just longer than Avatar.
This is longer than Avatar, and that one might be better. I saw Way of Water.
That's more accurate.
I saw Way of Water. I'm a big defender of those movies, but good.
Haven't
not
seen
great.
the second one. I want to.
I like it a lot. Like I'm very into like the deep sci-fi fantasy world building, and it is just the best you will ever see in a movie. But like the story is like fine, and like it's a little racist. Like, guys, we're gonna see you next week.
A little bit.
We'll figure out what next week is gonna be. I don't know.
Kevin Durant's getting traded to the Suns.
Cool. Okay, time for basketball talk. We gotta get to the other podcast. We'll see you guys.
We're out.